in the morning. You got me up, all cause you need to talk. To 4 in the evening, wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again, argue about everything. You are my darling, this kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day, I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say, we gon' be okay, we just gotta boom, bada boom, ba. I don't wanna fight, you know that I'm right, baby, let me talk to your body. We gon' be okay, hear me when I say.
We just different, I don't wanna.
Victim of narcissistic personality disorders. Men, have you been a victim of narcissistic personality disorders? Narcissistic personality disorder is a condition that often occurs within the United States. Some of NPD is caused by trauma as a child, neglect from being a child, but also NPD could be caused from this negative social conditioning where the child was given a level of entitlement. And it appears that many women in modern times actually have the trait of NPD, and some, if they don't have the trait, have the full-blown diagnosis, but they don't understand it. Men, if you are a victim of a woman that has been impacted by narcissistic personality disorder, many times you might question your sanity if what the things that are going on are actually true. Women with part narcissistic personality disorder and men with narcissistic personality disorder, whereas narcissistic personality disorder is mostly seen in men, they often do a myriad of things. Some of the things that they do could be seen as love bombing. Love bombing is a technique where they parade you with gifts in the initial stage as they're trying to groom you. The next stage you'll see with a woman with narcissistic personality disorder could be encapsulated in gaslighting. Gaslighting is an ego defense mechanism for women with narcissistic personality disorders, where they more or less will make you think you're crazy. You know what they did was wrong. You have the evidence. But they will convince you to the contrary by more or less denying what they think, denying what you've said, but they might deny what they've done. And many times in these kind of relationships, it can cause the man to be in a state of distress. It can cause him to question his mental sanity, and it can cause him to not focus on himself and lose time, and also lose what's called a violation of his inner sanctity. Another stage that most NPD women do, you will see more or less, or more or less have the condition of something called manipulation. When they manipulate you, they make you think that what they said was right. But many times, women with narcissistic personality disorders and men with NPD often focus and work on empaths. Empaths are people that are very kind and loving, and people that are more or less willing to help other people. But people with narcissistic personality disorders, they don't have empathy. So in order to get that fixed, they must feed what's called that narcissistic supply. We're going to have a powerful show on the day as we talk about the negativity of narcissistic personality disorders. And I need you guys to remember this as there are 7 steps to male optimization. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. Have you been a victim of NPD? Enjoy this show, share the content. Be well.
Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacate, staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. When the truth don't work, you start telling lies. Thought you were down to ride, you weren't down to ride. Caught switching, you were picking sides. Don't blink, caught slipping like a slip and slide. I was shooting dice till I got a nosebleed. Money on the floor, can't get cold feet. Took an L, should've put it in the offering. Lord, forgive me for my sins, don't know of me. Scary thoughts, I got scary thoughts. Lost control, now I'm taking charge. Breaking bills, friends breaking off. You could be the youngest, I'm the dawn. Kiss the ring now. In the scene like GOT. Stay awake, don't sleep. Like Jon Snow, get R.I.P. Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacay, I'm staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. Just me, myself, and I, my favorite threesome. Yeah. The cars I drive by, I never lease them. No. They say if you can't beat them, then you join them. No. That's no option, I don't join, I always beat them. Yeah. I was fake, you had to find me. Now I'm on beat, skating like I'm grinding. L hit me, said it's all about the timing. If you want the vision, get to spinning. My mama told me trust in God, it's never limits. Now I'm on the scoreboard, running up the digits. I put in work, you know I'm up to get it. Early bird gets the worm and the Yankee fitted. Like whoa, bags under my eyes and you know, won't complain, I'm tired, I'm on go. For that grip, 10 toes till they swole. For that grip, 10 toes till they swole. Remember those days, those L's, I couldn't sleep right now. I get paid, vacay, I'm staying B-side. Breaking the blues over steak, I gotta eat right. You could be my peace sign. I don't need that energy around me. I just need sun, you're so cloudy. I wake up good, you're so grouchy. Please get from around me. Like I work in finance. God bless, no, it's not by chance. Don't dab me, you're not my man. Don't at me, you're not my man. Mama said don't buy it if you cannot buy it twice. I cop by lot of tools and I don't pump fake with the price. Always on the grind, I put in work with all my might. I know that he got me, not by sight. Yeah, 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 yeah. I skirt like vanish, I slide out landish, beat to ranging, all black like Batman. Fit 4 days, that's for sure though. Grinding from the grip, no shame, take a photo. Time to take a trip, we head north to the border. Say you filling up, I'm my favorite type of hoarder. I got kids to feed, I got enemies, I got God's gift, so they envy me. Got some friends out in Memphis like I'm Aubrey. Got some friends fought for orange like some autumn leaves. Yeah, 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 yeah. I skirt like vanish, I slide out landish, beat to ranging, all black like Batman. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I skirt, I vanish, I slide out landish, beat to avenging, all black like Batman. All black like Batman. All black like Batman. All black like Batman. All black like Batman.
I'm a globetrotter. You and I 비교나 하지만 우리 너무 달라. We just different 나 좀 봐라. 여자나 집이나 세차나가 신다 너무 빨라. I'm a globetrotter. You and I 비교나 하지만 우리 너무 달라. We just different 나 좀 봐라. 여자나 집이나 세차나가 신다 너무 빨라. I'm a globetrotter. 지금부터 시작이야. I'm talking money cause rules. 이게 리듬이야. I'm talking money meant the moves. I've been killing it now. 아직 랩이 미쳐버린 범인 아니니까. 돌아봐 미래로 돌아가. I'm doing it cause I'm fly now. 비교나 더 알아. 아직까지 못하잖아. 켜보지만 나의 실력이 no visa. 뉴욕에서 한국까지 everybody raving visa. I'm balling out cause I'm a globetrotter. Yeah, 나처럼 잘 나가는 래퍼 불러. Yeah, 내 소미 나가다가
All right, guys, how are you guys doing on this lovely afternoon? Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, hit the 1 button. If you can hear me, I want to make sure you guys can hear me clearly because this show is going to be very important, guys, as it relates to continuing to fortify your inner sanctum as a man. Narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder that's often seen in men. Men tend to have the disorder more than women. But the issue is, guys, on today that many times those with narcissistic personality disorders, many times they're not aware of it. And there's a succinct difference between narcissistic personality disorders and narcissistic traits. Normally, narcissistic personality disorders is a byproduct of trauma, but also neglect as a child. And what happens, guys, because that person has what's called a fragile ego, and they did not go through all their successive stages of development, many times they use manipulation to get what they want because their ego is very fragile. In the clinical world, we call this something called ego syntonic. You know, ego syntonic is totally different than ego dystonic because people that are narcissistic personality disorders, they really think that they supposed to what they're doing is actually right. But a person that's ego dystonic, they don't like the feelings associated with their ego. And so a lot of times people with narcissistic personality disorders, they struggle. They struggle in this condition because they don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of it times is due to trauma, it's due to pain from the past, and it's due to an undeveloped ego. We're going to talk about, and guys, I need you guys to share the content. Get the likes up because we're going to have a very good show. This show is dedicated to the good men, but also is dedicated to the women that are listening. But because my channel is dedicated to the fortification and the empowerment of all men, but particularly black men or men of color, I wanted to do this show, a show that's been on my mind for a long period of time. Some of you guys are dealing with women that have that condition. They're not bona fide, but they do have the traits. And so you want to make sure you continue to fortify your mind because if you're dealing with a woman that have NPD, she can cause a lot of distress to you. She can cause a lot of distress to your pocketbook. She can cause a lot of distress to your psyche as a man. And so we need to have these conversations, guys, because these conversations are very vital to help you become the better version of yourself. So we're going to get right into it, guys. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about the origin of where the word narcissist came from. Narcissus came from the Greek, and we're going to look at it. Narcissus actually came from the Greek, and Narcissus was in medieval times, guys. And he was a person that was, how can I say it? He was more or less amused with what he saw in the mirror. Narcissus in Greek mythology, the son of the river god, Symphysius and the nymph Lypora, he was distinguished for his beauty. And so Narcissus would more or less look in the mirror. You know, he was mesmerized by his beauty. And Narcissus became paralyzed by his beauty because he was constantly looking in the mirror or looking in the mirror. When you look at a lot of women and men now particularly, but especially a lot of our women, they have been paralyzed by narcissistic personality disorders. Social media have given a lot of women an overinflated ego of themselves, and it's made a lot of men feel like they're not good enough. That's why average men now can't get average women, because average women think that they're better than average men. And you see it, guys, going on and on and on. You know, we didn't have to deal with this growing up in the 90s and the generation that came before us. Average women got with average men. But now you don't see average men and women getting together because average women think they're better than average men. And so social media have given these women a safeguard to more or less express themselves and more or less get the attention and the adulation of men. Now, are some of the modern women I'm talking about, do they have the NPD as a disorder? I'm not saying that. But do they have narcissistic traits? Yes. Some of the men tend to have narcissistic traits as well. Some of the men in these spaces have narcissistic traits or are bona fide narcissistic personality disorders. But they don't know it because they have not been clinically diagnosed. And so many times, guys, people with NPD are very manipulative. They'll tend to corral you in with love bombing. And many times, what they'll do, they tend to deal with empaths. An empath is a person that tend to put themselves in the place of someone else. Empaths tend to be more caring. If you look at it through the zodiac, empaths tend to be Cancers, Scorpios, and Pisces, you know, because they love to help people. They're very nurturing. And so narcissists use those people to feed off their, get that narcissistic supply. A narcissistic supply is when they use that person just like a person or a leech or animal is a parasite. It's a microorganism that leeches off a person to feel that emptiness that they have within themselves. And so, guys, that's why it's so important that we talk about mental health, because there are a lot of people walking around with mental health issues that are undiagnosed. They don't know that they got the disorder or the issue, and they think that they are normal people. And that's why some of these relationships are so broken. Many times people talk about fortifying a community, but you cannot fortify a community if you're dealing with undiagnosed mental illness. In the Black community, we tend to stigmatize mental illness because we don't understand it. And many times we didn't have it at our disposal because many times in the past, our therapy was the faith, was God, music, hymns, and there's nothing wrong with that because music is a part of mental health awareness, and music also is a part of therapy. But therapists, many times, and the research that we do is fortified in what's called empiricism. And so I don't want you guys to be victims of NPD because your life has what's called inherent worth and value. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to get right into it. I'm going to look at a clip that I did in the past talking about love after betrayal when I was talking about Ed Baxter, because many times guys are the victims of narcissistic personality disorders. They don't even know when it's coming. They don't see the cycle, you know, when they bring you in and they manipulate you to get you in the relationship. They love bomb you. And then what they do, they begin to wean you off. And what happens, the behavior many times, guys, is not a byproduct of healthy behavior modification. So they'll bring you in. Then after time, you know, they start to wean you off. And then they get rid of you. And many times that can cause a mental health crisis because it's a violation of your inner sanctum as a man. And remember, guys, I told you your main things you should focus on is number one, if you believe in God, God should be your number one focus. Then it should be your purpose as a man. And then your woman should come second, because you cannot allow a woman to violate your inner sanctum. If your inner sanctum is violated as a man, then you will never be on your purpose. When you are totally emotional, you are not thinking rationally. And when a man is very emotional, he cannot become the better version of himself. Men have to always operate in their logic, because when they become emotional, then they're very vulnerable. That's why I say women have to protect the ego of a man. But she can't protect your ego if she's not in control of her own emotions. So that's why these conversations are so important. So hold tight, guys. Give me 1 minute. And hold tight, guys. And I need you guys to share this content. Hold tight. Let me add this banner real quick. And then we're going to have a conversation. Guys, if you have not shared the content, share this content. Share it with 20 people. Share it with 5 people that believe in what I'm trying to do. Because NPD can impact you guys in a negative way, but also it can impact the women that are listening too. So we don't want you to be a victim of narcissistic personality disorders. Hold tight. Hold tight, guys. All right, we got it. So once again, I'm going to read through some of these comments in a minute. And like I said, guys, hit the like button. And guys, we're going to have a conversation talking about the negative impact of NPD. And I don't want you guys to be a victim of NPD. I don't want you guys to be a victim of narcissistic personality disorders. I don't want you guys to be a victim of it, because once again, when you are impacted by narcissistic personality disorders, you can't be the best version of yourself. Narcissists have a need for entitlement. Because of the social conditioning that a lot of our women have now, they have more or less been in need of being entitled. They're very entitled. Many feel that they're entitled to your resources. Many feel that they should get the best of the best without giving anything in return. And because of that, guys, many of you have sacrificed your health, you sacrificed your resources, you sacrificed your time for women that have not been conditioned to honor and serve you as men. Some of the women that are listening are dealing with narcissistic men. And as I said before, NPD tends to occur mostly in men. And those same men, ladies, will use you too if you're not careful. That's why you guys have to make sure you have the proper vetting in relationships, and sometimes do research on NPD, and also research on people that if you feel like they have parasitic conditions or parasitic behaviors, because this stuff can impact your mental health. And you don't want to be a victim of NPD. And the worst kind, sadly, is borderline personality disorders. We're not going to talk about that today. But I'm going to share, we're going to talk about it. This is fair use, guys. This is from a course that I took when I was getting my clinical. So hold tight, guys. I'm going to let you guys look at it in a minute, so hold tight. Hold tight. This is fair use. I do not own the intellectual property, but we are going to use it to talk about it, because this is very important. And so we're going to talk about how NPD, I do not own the intellectual property of this. This is from a course that I took, getting my clinicals, and getting my, and so I want you guys to listen to some of this. We're not going to look at all of it because it's too long, but I'm going to give you guys a small input into what NPD looks like and the psychopathology associated with narcissistic personality disorder. So listen.
Blown disorder as the narcissistic personality has, but they'll have the narcissistic personality disorder with traits of either borderline, histrionic, antisocial, whatever they are. So keep that in mind, because often you think you're working with somebody who might be borderline, and what you're actually working with is somebody who's a narcissist with borderline traits. So there is that overlap. Keep that in mind, okay? And that applies for all the clusters, all of the clusters. This is a developmental scale that I developed years ago. And what I tried to show here was different elements and different areas of progression or maturation in an individual from the time of birth all the way up into adulthood. Now, according to up in the upper left-hand corner are the theorists that I base this on: Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, Piaget, Maslow, and Erikson. So there's a nice combination, and those are the primary theorists that put this whole.
And guys, a lot of times NPD comes from what's called psychosocial stages of development. It comes from psychosocial stages of development. If a person is not going through all the stages of the development, they can be chronologically age, but they can be developmentally arrested. And you have a lot of people, men and women, where their development is arrested. Some of you guys are dealing with women with arrested development. Some of you women are dealing with men with arrested development. Because my channel is dedicated to empowering men, I tell men all the time, you need to make sure that your inner sanctum is not violated. If you get with women that have these conditions, that have mental health crises, they can cause a lot of damage to your finances, to your mind, to your future, and also to your life. And so it's important to understand what you're dealing with, because if you're not licensed, if you don't have the credentials, many times you can't see it. And so when you start questioning yourself and wonder what's wrong with me, why am I constantly keep getting these women? Sometimes these women look for men like you because you have a kind heart. And as I said earlier, you are an empath.
Combination together, whether it's psychosocial, superiority.
Hold on, guys.
So no lapse there. And if this next phase is gone through successfully, they'll progress to the next phase of development. However, when there is a disruption in one phase of development, let's say the oral phase, that child is going to become lagged. They're going to be halted there. They're not going to be able to successfully move on to the next phase. And then when they go to the next phase, they're not going to be able to successfully complete that because there's still that developmental lag from the previous phase of development. And if you've worked with individuals, I'm sure you have. Those of you who've worked with individuals, I'm sure if ever you've seen somebody that has a sense of shame, you're going to find the cousin to that guilt. There's always going to be guilt with shame and shame with guilt. So what that does, the way I use it, it kind of gives me a mental frame of reference to where maybe that individual might have been affected as they were developing their own personality or their own individuality as a child growing.
And that's why, guys, family is so important. I told you guys in the past that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized, and family is one of those elements. If a child is not getting their needs met in a healthy, stable family, they can be at risk for a lot of mental health issues. A lot of you men have been impacted by mental health issues. Some of you are dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues because you grew up in families where you didn't have the proper protective safeguards in place. Children that are in intact families where there are healthy relationships, where the man know his role, the woman know her role. The child is at less risk for mental health issues, less risk for recidivism, less risk for doing things that can impact them in a negative way, but also they are at less risk for their community. But right now, guys, with nearly 80% of our children being born out of wedlock, how can we talk about building a vibrant community when we don't have a true identity? We don't live in a culture where we tend to build our boys and make our boys feel good or better. We live in a society in a world where, we say black girl magic, black girls rock, but we don't have anything that says black boys rise. And I'm not against exoneration of girls. I'm not against that. But if boys are the warrior class, the class of warriors can rise no higher than the people that prepared them to be warriors. And so we got to talk about these things, guys, because you have a lot of broken men. That's why we have so many simps. That's why you have simps more or less validating bad behavior, because they don't have strong principles. They don't have fathers. They don't have men in their lives that teach them what power look like, that teach them what priorities and principles look like, and teach them what structure look like. I've said before in the past, if men would more or less change their trajectory, start demanding better, the women will have no other choice but to fall in line. We know that there are some chameleons. We know there are some that are going to lie and run game. But when women fall in line, and when women will fall in line when men know what their worth is and men know what their power is. But until then, we will continue this cycle of dysfunction that we're seeing now. So guys, get the likes up. If you have not donated, donate to the channel. I appreciate all the people that have been helping me on this stream and helping me with this show. If you have not also donated, donate to Cash App $7Smalls. I've been having some issues with Cash App here recently. I don't know if you guys have as well, but if you like what I'm doing, donate. These shows are very, very, very time consuming. I had to push the show back because I had to do a lot of edits. So it's a lot of work. I'm putting this stuff together. So if you like what I'm doing, donate to the channel, guys. If you don't have any money, I need at least 5 people share the content. I need to see 5 people sharing this content. Let's get this stream up to 100, hopefully, because I need men to understand about the negative impact of NPD. NPD can be very deleterious to your psyche as a man, but also to the good women that are listening can be very deleterious to you as well. You don't need to have parts of your mind deleted because of being impacted by a very predatory person. All right, so keep listening, guys. Hold tight.
And often what we do, we'll see rehearsals of those same infantile type behaviors in adults. And we know that we can go back and they've regressed. When I'll go through some, like in the anal stage, you will typically find people who have had some difficulty during that phase of development between the years of, say, 1 and 2, 2.5. All right. You'll find primarily people who are OCD. All right. And if you are working with somebody who's OCD and you're trying to work in understanding while you're doing, the movement on, all right, moving them onto a better level of functioning, or a higher level of functioning, you want to go back and explore what possibly might have concurred at that particular phase of development. Sometimes they're aware of it and sometimes they're not, all right? I'll give you an example. I had a woman came in with her husband and she was on the verge of leaving the marriage. And what it was is the husband was a very compassionate person. However, no matter what he brought home, if somebody came, a neighbor or somebody, he would give it to them, all right? And it really started to infuriate her. He even insisted that if the children were playing with other children and they wanted whatever they were playing with, he would insist that his children give it to them, all right? Not share, but just give it to them. So when we worked with him for a period of time, what came out was his parents had what was a mama papa grocery store, and the father would go to the market to get supplies, and the mother in the morning would manage the market. Their apartment or their little home was attached to the small little business they had. So she had one other child who was maybe 4, and she had my client was the younger one. What she would do in the morning so she could get ready to open up this business is she would put him in a high chair, and it was the kind of high chair that had the
guys, I'm not going to bore you guys to
it.
death with this. I'm just trying to give you guys a framework. I'm not going to bore you guys to death because I know y'all attention span is short, but I'm not going to bore you to death with it. But I want to give you guys a foundation to what it looks like. And you notice, guys, it's dealing with the different stages of development. Sigmund Freud talked about the oral, the anal, the pedal, the latency, the adolescent, the adulthood. There are psychosexual stages of development. There are psychosocial stages of development. Erikson talked about the psychosocial stages. Erickson talked about the cognitive, which is the awareness stages of development. So I'm just trying to give you guys a footprint. I know it's boring. I know much of you don't know what the heck she's talking about. But I just want to give you guys a small framework, and then I'm going to start getting more in deep into it. And it's going to be more generalized so it won't be too complex, all right? So bear with me. But guys, share the content, please. Share this content, all right? Thank you.
Anyway, she would put him in the high chair, and she would put his breakfast, whatever it was, on the tray, and he would sit there and eat his breakfast, and she would she would have him stay on the high chair until he passed his bowels, till he had a bowel movement, because she didn't have the time, so she says, or he said, to take care of him, all right? So he learned no matter what I take in that's gratifying, I have to wait to expel it. I have to expel it before I'm allowed to get off. And that was a mindset that was established in him, all right? And when we were able to trace back what some of the behavioral patterns were with him, and he was able to see a connection himself, the behavior stopped, believe it or not. Behavior stopped. And he got to a place where he said, well, I don't have to give everybody everything, right? So, that's how it affects. Now, the next chart is showing how personality develops, right? Personality is developing at the same time that a child is going through these developmental phases. And the very early phase, when we talked about the oral phase, is when the personality is developing in it, all right? That's That's the sense of who they are, their individuality. And when they go through the anal phase, let me go back a little bit. During the id phase, the child's entire focus is on survival needs. When they go to the anal phase, which is between 1, 2, 2.5, all right, the ego starts incorporating itself into the development of the personality, all right? The ego is the one that says, you're crying, I know you want this, but you have to wait, I'm just not ready right now, all right? Within reasonable limitations. That's what the ego does. When the child moves into the third phase of development, which was the Oedipal phase of development, that's when the superego, that's the part of the personality, the final part of personality, kind of takes over and says, the child is crying, the infant is crying, it wants to be fed now. The ego says, I don't have time. The superego will say, well, then I'm a bad person, or he's a bad person, or the child is behaving badly, not behaving, but the child is.
And so the id is primitive, guys. The id is very primitive. It's more or less the survival. The ego is the conscious, and the superego is that is more or less like that moral compass that helps a person stay grounded. But if a person does not go through all the successive stages of their development, then they cannot become better. And so that's why it's so important, once again, to have healthy families and also to have healthy attachment styles. A lot of these kids have grown up in homes where their attachments are not healthy. They don't know what it's like to be in a healthy environment or a healthy home, because many of these children have been victims of abuse and or neglect. So once again, guys, get the likes up, share the content, please. If you have not donated, donate to the channel. Keep listening, guys. Hold tight.
Is that. So the superego is what puts moral titles, all right, names onto what the child is experiencing. Now, you'll also see the line that's there. When there is a disruption, and it could be something traumatic, but remember, trauma is how the child or the infant perceives it. What might be traumatic for one child in the same family might not be traumatic to another child in the same family. A lot of that is temperament. And temperament too, we have to also explore, what is the child's place in the family structure? Because there are some children who kind of get lost in the mix. You know, you've got the oldest who's got the significance of that position. You've got the youngest who has the significance.
All right, shout out to Elisa Del Rosario. Thank you, dear, for that $5 super sticker.
Right? That's a deal, right?
Thank you,
That's a
Elisa
deal, right?
Del Rosario. Thank you, dear.
Right?
I
That's a
appreciate
deal,
that.
right? That's a deal, right? Got 5 on it.
If you guys heard that, let me know. If you guys heard that, let me know. Mr. Kosher, Elisa said, Mr. Kosher, do you think a narcissist can change? Should they be given multiple chances, or is it best to forgive but keep a distance? I think it's the latter. It's best to forgive but keep a distance. Unless that person is going to do therapy, then they're not going to be aware of it. Many times, people with narcissistic personality disorders, it can't be cured. So I would say keep a distance and set healthy boundaries. I would say keep a distance and set healthy boundaries. They're not going through therapy, because they will continue to keep you do that negative loop where they can be more at risk of using you. These people are broken. But like Corey said, I would agree with Corey to keep your distance unless they've been through therapy and they're going to do it consistently and they are aware of it. Because many times narcissists don't have empathy, and empathy is something that most people have. They don't have empathy, but they will feign empathy or fake empathy to use you to feed that narcissistic supply. They got to always go through what's called that narcissistic supply, because they need constant admiration. Because remember, guys, their ego is very fragile. They have very fragile egos, okay? So hold tight. And once again, guys, keep listening. Hold tight.
To be in that position. And the middle child is kind of just the middle child. Unless you have a boy and the middle child's a girl, then she has her own sense of significance. So you have to take that into consideration at the same time. Now, if you look at this, whatever the trauma is, it could be mama went to the hospital to have another baby, but mom is my object. You know, she's my ideal object and she's not here, and I'm feeling like I'm being abandoned, all right? Another child might.
That's tied to something called object relation theory, guys. That's where you get attachment styles from, object relation theory. When a child is young, it attaches to the object to more or less form a relation. But if that object is not around, then that child can have what's called an insecure ego. And so many times, because that child is constantly in survival mode, that child tends to many times carry that negative trait on up to adulthood. That's why many people that have NPD need therapy, and many times they need to own up to their long-term adulthood. A lot of kids, a lot of men, but a lot of women also are suffering from this condition. You guys are dealing with some women that are ticking time bombs. You don't even know it. And many times those that have NPD, if they feel like they are cornered, they can become homicidal. They can become homicidal, but many times they won't commit suicide. But they can become homicidal when you corner them like a wild animal, because they don't want to be held accountable for the behaviors that they are more or less eliciting. So hold tight.
Might not have that emotional reaction to it. If there's a severe trauma in that phase of development between it and the ego, those are some of the, you're going to see the continuum of the cluster A manifestations, right? If it happens during the anal phase, you're going to see the anal in this Oedipal phase, you're going to see your cluster A, and then you'll go into seeing neurotic behaviors and maladaptive behaviors as they age, all right? So the younger the infant is, the more severe they could be harmed psychologically, all right? Just keep that in mind. Okay. This is when they're going through developmental stages. The Oedipal is, and this has changed a lot because we've changed socially and economically. So
remember, guys, when they come down to psychosocial theory, you got Freud, Sigmund Freud, is something that's called psychosexual. He tended to tie social development or developmental child into the sexual theory. Erikson talks about psychosocial. He believed that the mind is impacted by social change. Piaget talked about cognitive or psychocognitive awareness. He believed it's tied to the awareness or how a person can see things from a psychological or cognitive perspective. And so initiative versus guilt, when a child is not given the initiative to do something, then they feel guilty. And so that's why many times a person's development can become arrested. You see the characteristics: borderline, psychotic, severe character disorders, depressive, neurosis, and compulsive. And so that's why, once again, guys, I tell you there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized. And so we live in a very dysfunctional culture. The culture in America is very dysfunctional, but sadly, it tends to impact people of color more. The West is very dysfunctional. White folks and all, but once again, we have higher rates of single-parent homes than the other ethnic groups. White people have it just as much, Indians or Latinos as well. But sadly, our numbers are a lot higher, and it's causing a lot of distress with our boys and our girls because they don't have healthy families. Once again, I believe in healthy families. I believe in community, but the communities are broken, and sadly, some of the people that voted, they didn't vote for community, they voted for themselves. And so you can't talk about having a healthy community when you're voting for yourself. You can't talk about having a healthy community when you don't have the vision or the provision to see the outcomes of policies that are not beneficial to you, your family, your men, or your community. If you want a man to protect you, then you got to be willing to protect him. But the sad case is, have you protected him? Have you protected the boys? Because there are some content creators that talks about deleting our boys. We talk about male infanticide, especially black boys. And I have a problem with that. And so should you, because the boys are part of the warrior class. And a class of warriors can rise no higher than the people that nurture them to become warriors. So once again, guys, keep listening. And once again, guys, share the content. Thank you to those that have given. But share the content, guys, and let's get this stream up to 100. 31 people is not enough for a conversation as powerful as this. I need 5 people to share this content to help me grow this channel, because once again, these shows are time consuming. So guys, I appreciate everything you're doing, and keep listening. Thank you, guys.
it seems as though what was normal 20 years ago for a 2-year-old, now they are past that, and they're maybe doing it at 18 months or a year and a half. Okay, so it's spreading out a little bit differently. But this is when they deal with the initiative versus guilt. This is when you allow a child to explore their environment and you reward them, or if you are punitive, or if you're constraining to them.
All right, guys. I'm not gonna go do that stream. That stream is almost 2 hours long. I'm not gonna go do that. But I got some more stuff for you guys. But Alicia, one of the ways you'll know that they're rubbing off on you, dear, you asked the question, how do you know they're rubbing off on you? And one of the ways, Alicia, that you'll know that they're rubbing off on you is this. You begin to compromise what your values are. You had values before you got into the relationship, but now, Alicia, you know that your boundaries are becoming very porous. There are 3 types of boundaries, Alicia. One is healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries when you're benefiting and they're benefiting. Those are healthy boundaries. But porous boundaries, Alicia, are times when you allow those people to violate things that you never allowed them to violate or other people to violate in the past. Therefore, your boundaries become very porous. But rigid boundaries, Alicia, are the byproduct of being impacted by a narcissist. Now you got a wall up and you don't trust people. So you see the cycle. You had healthy boundaries, but the narcissist manipulated you, that narcissists apply. Now you got what's called porous boundaries, meaning they have holes in it. And now you got very rigid boundaries because you've been through that trauma bonding of dealing with a very narcissistic person. And so they're very manipulative. They know how to use you. They will shower you with gifts, do love bombing. You know, many times they're going to gaslight you. And gaslighting is one of the tactics of a narcissist. You can give them evidence and show them the evidence, but they're always deflect. They won't take ownership for what they're doing, and they're always pointed back to what you did. They'll throw you under the bus because, you know, that's how they protect themselves. Remember, narcissists are normally in survival mode. They have very low self-esteem, and they're very insecure because they never had a secure attachment in infancy. Their attachment was never secure, so they have to do things to more or less satiate that insecure ego that they have. All right? So I'm going to look at something by Dr. David Lagan. And so, guys, I'm trying to bring mental health awareness to the Black community. You know, we don't talk about therapy, you know, and I'm trying to bring awareness because there are a lot of mental health pathologies that have been undiagnosed, and some of you are dealing with people that have mental illness, and you guys have been benefited in a negative way. And I don't want men or women to be dealt with it, but because my channel is dedicated, as I said earlier, to male empowerment, I don't want men to be impacted by it in a negative way as well, because the laws in America do not benefit men, sadly. And because of that, a lot of men suffer in silence because we have not created a chamber or safe havens where men can actually tell their stories and more or less share their pain, okay? Hold tight. Gregory Scotland said, hi, Coach, I appreciate when you point out the decision making that took place in the last election. Yes, right. Many, Gregory Scotland didn't vote for policy. They voted for themselves. But yet these are the same people that say, we want protection and we need somebody to protect the community. But how? You didn't vote for policies that were beneficial to Black men, Black families, and the Black community. You voted for yourself. You voted for individualism. So, you know, now the chickens are coming home to roost, but you want the same men that you didn't vote for policy that would benefit them and their ego and the family, now to come and rescue you. But it doesn't work that way. Men do things based on honor and principle. And so that's what's going on, guys, sadly. Guys, get the likes up once again. Let's get this stream up to 50 to 100. It's coming in slow, but I want this stream to get up to 50. Hopefully it get to 100, because once again, guys, I love you guys, but these shows are very time consuming. Donate to the channel if you have not donated. So I'm going to look at something by Dr. Peter Lagan. He's a licensed therapist. He's a licensed psychologist, by the way. I'm a licensed therapist, but he's a licensed psychologist. And those that have what's called an LCSW, that's what I have. We don't have to get a doctorate in psychology to practice. We can have a license in clinical social work. That's what I have. And I can practice, you know, my own. I can have my own practice if I had to. So hold tight, guys. Dr. Peter Lagan, hold tight, and we're gonna look at. He's gonna give you guys some more feedback into us. Hold tight, hold tight.
Question: the idea of narcissism. Narcissism sits on a continuum. We need to have a certain level of confidence and a certain level of self-esteem to function and be productive on a daily basis. NPD.
So, guys, you see that I gave you guys a theoretical framework, but now I'm giving you guys a clinical framework. We always start with the theoretical framework, but now I'm giving you a clinical framework. Keep listening.
Is an extreme manifestation of narcissism. It's over to one side of the continuum. It can only be diagnosed by a qualified mental health clinician, and there are certain criteria that mental health clinicians look for when determining if someone has the diagnosis NPD. The first is a grandiose sense of self-importance. Oftentimes, somebody with NPD needs to be and wants to be recognized as superior, even though there's no evidence to support this superior standing. And if that recognition doesn't occur, sometimes frustration and sadness can set in for that person. So it's expected. They expect oftentimes to be recognized as being superior. The next,
And that's why I tell you guys, you got some guys in these spaces that have narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorders. That's why they throw off on you. They try to find chinks in your armor to make themselves feel better. Remember, these people have very fragile egos. They have what's called arrested development. Many have what's called schema afflictions, a term that I created based off of cognitive behavioral therapy. Schema means a fixation. It comes from the word scheme. It's a pattern of thinking that a person have. But they have an affliction based on, or they have an affliction based on the pain that they've been through. The schema is the things that they have in their head based on, and then it turns into an affliction based on the pain. So they have what's called a schema affliction, schema affliction, based on the pain that they have and based on the trauma that they've been through. And so once again, some of the people that come to mock you and look down on you and laugh at you, many of them either have narcissistic traits or they have what's called undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorders, because once again, guys, it's a condition that mostly is seen in men. But also many modern women have the traits of narcissism, and some are full-blown narcissists, or they have what's called borderline personality disorders, okay? Hold tight.
next criteria we look for is a preoccupation with unlimited success. And with this manifestation, we can see a lot of different occurrences. One would be kind of a fantasy. So a preoccupation with this fantasy of having unlimited success, power, money, fame, and no real clear way that that would be achievable. And oftentimes we find this is unrealistic. It's not always unrealistic, just most of the time it is. And it takes on a nature either in fantasy or something they really believe they can get.
Shout out to my man Gregory Scotland for that $10.
That's a deal, right? That's a deal,
A little
right?
token.
That's a
Appreciate it,
bet,
Gregory. I
right?
appreciate
That's
that,
a
sir.
deal,
Thank
right?
you.
That's a deal, right?
I appreciate that, Gregory. Thank you for starting the pay brigade. I appreciate that, guys. And thank you also to Alicia Del Rosario for your $5 super sticker earlier. Thank you, dear.
Get that is far beyond what we would consider normally when we think about being successful or even being famous. And again, there's no real evidence to support that this fame or power is really going to happen. The next criterion is this idea that someone's too special to be understood by regular people. So we see oftentimes with somebody with NPD this idea that the people around them really can't understand how good they are, how special they are, but even just understand their true nature, that they are complex. They're complex to such a degree that normal individuals just can't comprehend how special and amazing they are. But certain special people could. And oftentimes this takes the shape of famous people. A certain famous actor or business person or politician, maybe they could understand, but a normal individual couldn't. So this idea of being too special is one of the criterion. The next area is when an individual needs excessive admiration. And this points to kind of an interesting topic of self-esteem. There are a few different theories about self-esteem.
And once again, guys, that self-esteem, the need for constant admiration, the need for the talk about power. You know, I've seen some people in these spaces that have the same conditions that this doctor's talking about, but also as a licensed therapist, I've seen it. They got to always use you as a target to project their pain onto you. We call it in the clinical world displaced aggression. They see you as a target of their success, and therefore, because the success that you're getting and they don't have it, they see you as a target. So therefore, they throw javelins at you to make themselves feel better. You know, sadly, guys, this stream should be up easily to 100 people, but you know, we don't value mental health. We don't value mental awareness. That's why most content creators don't do content like this, because people don't really support it. They don't, value or take it serious. We value foolishness. We value salaciousness, gossip, celebrity news, and I'm not necessarily against that if you want to do it. But I see why other content creators stream off to other things, because we don't value the things that are good for the soul. We're so used to eating junk food that that's all we know is junk food. And so when licensed professionals come to give you guys solid content that's going to be a benefit to your mind and body, we don't support it. As I said earlier, this stream should be up to 50 to 100 people easily. But we have to struggle because folks don't, value the content. And I'm not talking about the guys that are listening. I appreciate the 35 that are listening. You guys are awesome. But I'm trying to show you guys a pattern. But we're talking about getting the black community and changing the black community. But when we offer solutions to changing the black community, we don't value it. But you wonder why people don't continue to give their best, because we don't value the things that need to be valued. We look at the symptoms, well, we don't look at the root of the symptoms. You can't change the community until you look at the root of the symptoms. But keep listening, guys, and thank you to the two that have donated. Keep donating, guys, and get the likes up. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And individuals with NPD, including this one theory that suggests they actually have high self-esteem. I'm going to have to agree here with what's in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, based on my experience treating this disorder.
Hi, my name is Annie, and I would like you to give you a few reasons why you should consider dating a young Slavic lady.
I would say it's not the case that we see high self-esteem, but rather almost all the time we see low self-esteem, a particularly fragile self-esteem for people with this disorder. So they're looking for this excessive admiration, and really their self-esteem is low. Oftentimes with this excessive admiration piece, we also see somebody who looks for compliments in normal conversations. So they put information out there in an effort for somebody else to recognize how special they are and give them a compliment. Another element we see with NPD a lot of the time is the sense of entitlement. They expect somebody to look at them favorably, people that suffer from this disorder. Again, there's no reason necessarily that they would expect that other than the disorder. The amount of entitlement they have exceeds what would be expected. So everybody has some sense of entitlement. With NPD, it's greatly expanded. The next element is exploiting relationships. And a lot of times this is thought of as being deliberate. If somebody's exploitive in interpersonal relationships, it's a deliberate attempt to be that way. But when I think of NPD, I often think of this as an unintentional consequence of the disorder, not a conscious decision. Part of the entitlement, part of the needing admiration leads to exploitation. Certainly sometimes it can be intentional. Which brings me to the next criterion, which is a lack of empathy. Now, this is an element.
Thank you, Michael Graham, for that $5 super sticker. Thank you, Michael Graham. Tim, thank you, sir. You sent money before, Tim, in the past. You sent $5 super stickers, Tim, and I appreciate it. But for some reason, Tim is constantly saying that it's failed. So, Tim, I don't know what's going on. You might be overseas. Maybe you're overseas. If you're overseas, maybe that's why it's not going through. But thank you, Tim, for sharing the $5. You attempted to give me $5 last week. Last Saturday or Sunday, I believe. And also you attempted today, Tim, but for some reason it's not going through. I don't know if it's, I don't know. I don't know if you're overseas. Zoom to Thailand did the same thing, but it didn't go through. But anyway, Tim, I appreciate it. And also Michael Graham, thank you, sir. And to the people that have given. But Tim, look into that for me, brother. But thanks again, Tim, for your kindness, sir. Thank you.
That we see shared between narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. And again, I think sometimes this is conceptualized as deliberate. that somebody's ignoring their ability to empathize. But really, with this disorder, and with antisocial personality disorder, it's an inability, for the most part, to recognize the feelings and thoughts and goals of other people. Somebody with this disorder simply can't connect with the nonverbal and verbal cues that indicate what type of feelings somebody has. They can't pick up on what we refer to as affect, or the presentation of feelings that somebody has. The next element here is when somebody is envious of others and they believe that other people are envious of them. We see this with NPD. And again, it's unrealistic. Everybody at some point has envy for other people and may believe to some extent that somebody envies them in some way. But with NPD, again, it's taken way out of proportion. It's much greater than the evidence supports. And
Guys, some of these beefs that you see in YouTube is due to NPD. They have a jealousy of the other person. Some of the beefs you see in your home and in your families is due to jealousy, because they need somebody to feed their narcissistic supply. They need somebody to fill their ego, because remember, most narcissists are very insecure. And many times personality disorders cannot be cured. They can be managed through cognitive behavior therapy, narrative therapy, and other forms of the treatment models, but many times it can't be cured. And many times they are leeches, and many times they feel that their ego is syntonic, meaning they feel that what they're doing is right. That's why they never change, because they think what they're doing is right. And many times they lack empathy because they cannot see other people's needs outside of their own selfish needs. Remember, the narcissist was developed, guys, through trauma. And yeah, so Top Gun, yeah, I know you said you sent something too, brother, but I didn't see anything, man. So I don't know what's going on with these cash apps. But I'm grateful, guys, for everything that you guys are doing. I appreciate it. But for some reason, guys, some of these cash apps are not going through. But thank you, guys, once again.
like most of the traits with NPD, they are in fact traits. They are something that we see chronically. So that envious state that we would see in individuals that fall within normal limits, we don't see with NPD. It's more of a trait. That envy is there a lot of the time. It's chronic. As part of this element, sometimes we think of this idea that somebody with NPD tends to devalue the contributions of other people. So they may be working on a project, and that project may have been successful, and they may say that they deserve the vast majority of the credit for that project's success, and that other people's contributions were okay, they were helpful, but they just weren't special, and they weren't important or crucial to the project. The last criterion in NPD is this idea of arrogance. And a lot of times we see this expressed in terms of an NPD sufferer being...
And he's correct. Go back and look at some of the people that you see in your life. Look at some of the women that you're dealing with. Look at some of the men that are in your circle. But also look at some of these content creators. Look at all the symptoms that you're seeing. Arrogance, lack of empathy, projection of their frail ego. These are people that have what's called narcissistic personality disorders. And it's sad because that's due from a place of brokenness that many of them have. Shout out to Luke Casey for that $10 super sticker. Thank you, dear. Luke Casey said that...
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Hold tight.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal,
That is
right?
a
That's
deal,
a
right?
deal,
Thank you,
right?
Luke Casey. But Luke Casey said, I'm going to watch the replay as I came in late to the live stream. I love the topic. Dr. Ramani from Med Circle has an entire playlist focused on narcissism. Thank you, dear. Right. And narcissism is it's becoming the norm because a lot of guys is due to family brokenness.
condescending toward other people. So they may...
When was the last time you did a proper cleanse of your intestines? Maybe you do them often, maybe you've never done one. But when most people
go somewhere like a bit...
And listen to what he said, guys. Very condescending to other people. Very condescending to other people. Once again, when you see people that are very condescending, they could have one or two things. Either blown out narcissistic personality disorders, or they can have what's called narcissistic traits. These people really, as I said earlier, guys, come from a place of brokenness because many times they have a very fragile ego. They tend to exude jealousy. They're very jealous because they feel like They deserve all the love and the admiration. Many times it comes from a place of brokenness. It comes from a broken family. And many times it comes from a place of pain and also from neglect, because many times narcissists don't have what's called healthy attachment styles. And it's sad. And that's why I do these shows, guys, because you got a lot of folks that might look healthy on the outside, but they're really mentally ill and they don't even know that they're mental. Now, you know, in our culture, dysfunction is the new normal. It's normal to be dysfunctional, and it's sad. Top Gun, once again, I think you had sent something too, brother, and you and Tim, but it didn't go through, so I don't know what's going on. Tim, I'll reach out to you at some point, brother, but thank you, Tim and Top Gun. Thank you.
Business and receive a service from somebody and rate that person as inferior, their abilities as inferior, maybe indicate that they're not competent. And they may tell that to a third party and not directly to the person that they're essentially accusing of being incompetent, or they may tell that person. There's different levels of arrogance we see with NPD. So when looking at narcissistic personality disorder, we can see that somebody with this disorder typically does not do well with criticism. They respond poorly to criticism. They often take criticism as humiliating, and this can lead to shame. Again, I believe this is consistent with the idea that most people that have this disorder actually have low self-esteem. With this shame, especially if it continues for a while, this can lead to depressive symptoms. Now, when looking at the excessive need for admiration, if that need is met, this can lead to hypomanic or manic symptoms. So we can see depressive and hypomanic and manic symptoms.
So Lulu Bean, you asked the question there, can two people with narcissistic personality disorder coexist peacefully? I would say no. But because how can you feed what you want? They will become cannibals of one another. They will probably sabotage one another, and they probably will use one another to get the power. So can two narcissists coexist peacefully? I would say no. Because, you know, that's like, can two people that have schizophrenia coexist peacefully? And they're both are hearing auditory hallucinations, having auditory hallucinations, or more or less seeing things, then they might think the person that they're with is their enemy or their victim. So no, I don't think they can peacefully coexist together. But then again, I don't know, because sometimes narcissists feed off on one another. They build each other up due to negative toxicity. So yes and no, depending on the situation. If it's a situation where they're trying to build each other's ego, then yes. If it's a situation where the one is getting more attention than the other, then they will turn on themselves through a process called cannibalism. Shout out to Sage Talk. So it just depends on the context and the condition of that relationship.
In individuals, sometimes we
because remember this, Lulu Bean, misery loves company. So when you got two miserable people together, yes, they can coexist for a very dark purpose. But if that narcissist, if both of those narcissists, one is getting more attention and the other one's feeling left out, then they can't coexist in a peaceful way. That's why you begin to see a lot of this toxic behavior in YouTube, but also you begin to see toxic behaviors in our society because narcissists got to feel like they're important.
You can see this in individuals with NPD. Other illnesses that are comorbid with NPD, meaning they can occur at the same time or they're more likely to occur, would be anorexia nervosa and substance use disorder. In particular, we see an elevated risk for cocaine use disorder. As far as other mental health disorders that would be comorbid with NPD, we would see other personality disorders like borderline, histrionic, antisocial, and paranoid. They would be comorbid with this illness, meaning they'd be more likely to occur in somebody with NPD than somebody that does not have it. And in terms of prevalence, there are a lot of different studies that show a lot of different numbers for how prevalent NPD is. Roughly, if you look at the research, it would be reasonable to say about 1% of the population has NPD. So again, going back to one of my original points, if only 1% of the population has NPD, that leaves a lot of people that have narcissistic traits.
Boom.
Where these traits aren't so severe that they'd be classified as having the disorder.
Right. Did you hear what I said? What he said, guys? Some have narcissistic traits. It's not full-blown narcissism. They have traits, and those traits many times is a byproduct of social conditioning. That's why social media have become the new supply for narcissists, Remember, a child that's been grown up in a family where they've been entitled can have the traits of narcissism, but they don't have the disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is a lot more severe because it's a small percentage. And many times guys are seeing them men. So we got about a minute on this, and then we're going to continue this conversation. And guys, I'm continuing to share the content and keep listening, guys. Thank you.
So narcissism, again, runs on a continuum, and there are healthy levels of narcissism. NPD is a personality disorder, so we would think of it as chronic and long-lasting. Mental health treatment for NPD can help reduce the symptoms, and it can help individuals to adjust to circumstances that may occur because of NPD. Trouble with relationships, trouble in jobs, and other types of situations can occur because of the symptoms of this disorder. And mental health counseling can sometimes help with that. I hope you found this description of narcissism.
All right, guys. So that's another foundational framework. So once again, guys, you got what's called the theoretical framework, but then you have what's called the clinical framework. But now we're going to talk about the life situation. And so once again, some of you guys that are listening have been victims of narcissism. You guys have been impacted by narcissistic women. We live in a culture where many of the women have narcissistic traits. They have a high sense of entitlement. They think that their importance is important than yours. Many lack empathy. They don't really care about your feelings. That's why so many men suffer in silence. And, that's why we got to have these conversations, because I don't want you guys to be a victim of narcissism. I don't want you guys to be a victim where your inner sanctum, guys, once again, is violated. That's why if you listen to what my content is saying, I tell men that they should do everything in their power to fortify their inner sanctum as a man. Your inner sanctum goes back to the Hebrew, back to the Levites. The Levites, when they had the Ark of the Covenant was a representation of God on the earth. And so the Ark of the Covenant was that holy place. It was that sacred place that no one could go to. Every man should have an inner sanctum where no one can violate that inner sanctum. And you definitely should not allow a woman that's not worthy to violate that inner sanctum. That's why you had to properly vet women. But look at Samson. Samson allowed Delilah to violate his inner sanctum. Delilah was a narcissist. She didn't care about Samson. She only cared about herself. And so she violated Samson's inner sanctum, and she found out what his secrets were. That's why many times, guys, the only man should have access to your inner sanctum is the Creator, number one. Number two, it should be a few guys that you can trust. It's only a few, because true friends are far and few in between. A few guys that you can trust and share. And they should not be allowed to come into that holy place, that place where a person can violate. And then the last person should be the woman that you're in your life. God, purpose, and then your woman. But it should never be your woman, God, and then your purpose. Because when a man is vulnerable, he's more at risk of hurting himself and not fulfilling his mandates on earth. So that's why I always talk about men focusing on their purpose, on God first, their purpose, and then the woman comes last. Because it doesn't mean that you don't love your woman, but you got to love her within reason. You can never love her more than you love yourself, because women do things based on how they feel. But men do things based on pragmatism. We do things based on principle. We do things based on standards. Masculine men do, not simps, not men that don't know who they are as men. And that's why, guys, we have these conversations. So you begin to see entitlement more so now. You begin to see a lot of entitlement because of social media. And many times, guys, what a narcissist will do, they'll get you in what's called that Venus flytrap. They'll get you to what's called love bombing. So I'm going to play another clip, and then I'm going to drop the link, and you guys can come up and we can have a conversation, because I don't want you guys to be a victim of narcissistic personality disorders. Some of you ladies are dealing with men that have narcissistic personality disorders. Some of you ladies are empaths. Some of these men are taking advantage of your kindness. They're using you to feed that narcissistic supply. Many times you ladies think that you are crazy. You know what the person did was wrong, but they're so manipulative, they have a way of convincing you that you are crazy. They would threaten to hurt themselves. They'll lie about certain things. They'll threaten to hurt you because they don't want to be held accountable. And that's why I say that, it's important, guys, to have these conversations. It's important to have these conversations because you don't want to be a victim of a narcissist, especially those that have what's called borderline personality disorders. Narcissistic personality disorders are cluster A. Borderline personality disorders are cluster B. Cluster B personality disorders many times are very hard to deal with. Most therapists don't want to deal with borderlines. They won't touch a borderline because borderlines are very toxic. Shout out to Devon Morant. Thank you, brother, for that $5 super stick. He said mental health education is crucial, especially in our community. More people should be focused on this topic, but unfortunately, they'll rather hear gossip. Yes, sir, bro.
Bet, right?
Right.
That's a deal, right? That's
They'll
a
rather hear
deal,
gossip.
right?
This stream should be up to 100
Bet, right?
or at
That's
least
a
200.
deal, right? That's a deal, right?
It should be. But see, I do these shows for a reason because, people say, let's find solutions, let's build our community. But, when, we give you the solutions, you don't value it. So the gospel say don't cast your pearls to swine. People don't value the things that's for the fortification of the mind and spirit, Devon. You're correct. They don't value it. But we wonder why our community is so broken. We wonder why. Sadly in the black community many times and also in America, we tend to be proactive than reactive. But your value systems will predicate the things that you believe in. Therefore, your boundaries are based on your values. But we don't value education. We don't value mental health awareness. We don't value stuff like that, sadly. Luke Cage said the culture convention, we argue that feminism is a huge ideology that uses narcissism to enter men's inner sanctum. For example, Boy Scouts, NFL. Yes, ma'am. I agree with you 100%, Luke Cage. Yes. I would say that that feminism is a huge ideology that uses narcissism to enter a man's inner sanctum. Yes, because it's about power. It's about power. It's about grandiosity. It's about feeding that narcissistic supply. So you're correct, Luke Case. I agree with you 100% because remember, the gospel says that idolatry is to rebellion, and rebellion is like witchcraft. And so it's a rebel spirit. Most of those into feminism have the spirit of a rebel. They're rebellious. They want power. And remember, Frederick Douglass said that power never conceded to anything without a struggle. It never have and it never will. Men want power. They want the men to become subjugated. And this goes back to the tenets of theology. The gospel says in the book of Genesis that she will have a desire for her husband, but he will rule over her. Men are supposed to God and supposed to love their women first, but men are supposed to guide their women and rule over them in a loving, caring way. Because look what happened when men lose their place as it relates to dominion. And sadly, most modern women are not wife ready or wife worthy. They're not ready for the office of being nobody's wife. They don't know what a wife looks like. Many don't know what masculine authority look like. But some say they want a husband. But you don't know what service is because you can't be a leader until you have the heart of a servant. How can you lead your community but you don't want to serve your man? How can you lead your children when you don't want to serve your man? But that's due to the poisoning that so many have gotten and so many have now. And that's why you begin to see a culture where the communities are so broken and fragmented. That's why, once again, as I said earlier, those that are proponents of community revival, revitalization and community upheaval, I'm not against it, but we got to uncover a lot of the mental pathology that we're dealing with. We got to come up with boundaries and standards because we can put a Band-Aid on the problem, but until we address what the issue is, we'll never get to the root of the cause. Shout out to my man, MC Recovery and Wellness. Shout out, brother, for that $10 super sticker. Thank you, sir.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal.
Thank you,
right?
MC
That's a
Recovery
deal,
and
right?
Wellness. I appreciate that, brother.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Thank you, sir. He said, our son mother have custody. She said, my mother hurt me. I want things my way. You're a narcissist signing on me, saying all couples argue. I said, not if we. You funny, man. And you're right, Martin 35. He did tempt Eve with power when he stated, you will know that what God knows. Right. He said, you should become as gods. You're correct. He tempted her with power. That's why people don't understand that many see some of our women as agent provocateurs of white supremacy. Because power has not been given to black men, the rightful heirs, but they gave it to a lot of our women. But you want wounded, mentally broken men to protect you when no one is protecting his ego. His ego is his heartbeat. His ego is his pride. His ego is his inner sanctum as a man. So who's protecting his ego? Who's protecting him? Who's nurturing his masculinity? Who's harnessing his masculinity? Dr. T.S. Johnson talked about a term called concuserves. Concubine for sex, and a serf is a servant to serve that woman, whether it be for sex or for resources. The commodity of subjugation, or the commodification of subjugation, a term that I created. Men are seen as tools to be subjugated for the fickle needs of that woman at that particular time. And so you women that have sons, do you want your sons to be serfs? Do you want your sons to be commodities, to be used and not exonerated as men? Do you want your sons to be demonized? Do you want your sons to be minimized? Do you want your sons not to get the proper nurturing that they need, ladies, to become the better versions of themselves? Once again, we say we want solutions, but do we really want solutions? How many of our women are actually marching on Capitol Hill and demanding that the laws be changed that are impacting men and impacting boys? But see, we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the things that benefit us, but we're not looking at our boys that are suffering. Because, once again, you can't get protected if you're not protecting these boys. And that's sadly what's going on. Hold tight, guys. Shout out to the Chocolate Smurf. I ain't seen her in a minute. How you doing, the Chocolate Smurf? She said, yes, leader being, because they're not operating as women. They're operating as a man. That's why they need to nurture somebody, because they have no children to do that with. Right, dear. You're correct. You are 100% correct. And that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing a very broken culture. Life coach says, sweet little being, yes, I agree with you. 100% about the two clowns. I stopped watching because of those gynocrats. Okay, I don't know what that means, life coach, but shout out to life coach. Cortez Smith said before the enemy gave black women power, they had to convince them that they needed power. Yes, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Tim Howell said that Western women got to travel to see what feminine women is and what a wife's support should be. Western men should know as well. Western society has poisoned our minds, and we have to be unbrainwashed. You're correct, brother. You are 100% correct. We definitely have to be unbrainwashed because some of you guys are not used to getting honor and respect. Shout out to Top Gun. He said, get the likes up. No doubt. Get the likes up, guys. Share this content. I need 5 people. If I get 5 folks that can share this content, I'm going to show you. I'm going to shout y'all out on the end of the stream. I need 5 people. So at the end of the show, I should at least see 5 folks that shared this content with at least 3 to 5 people. So guys, please share this content. Don't let another man suffer in silence. Don't let another man, guys, suffer in silence. All right. We don't need to see our brothers suffering in silence because of narcissistic personality disorders. Okay. All right. Hold tight, guys. Hold tight. All right. So what I'm about to do next, guys, I'm going to pull up a stream that I did. This guy's name is Ed Baxter. He was talking about love after betrayal. And I want to ask, how many guys have been gravely impacted by narcissism? If you have been impacted by narcissistic women, I want you to hit 1. To the men that have been impacted by narcissistic women, I want you guys to hit 1. Hit 1 if you've been gravely impacted by narcissistic women. Hit 1. And let's talk about how that narcissism impacted you as a man, how it caused you loss for work, how it caused you a lack of resources. I want you to talk about how that condition impacted you in a negative way and has caused you guys to have what's called a schema affliction now. So let's talk about it by hitting that 1 button. Hold tight. And we're going to do a show, talk about a show that I did in the past when I first started, the Manhood Chronicles and the Kosher Clinician. So hold tight. And this is talking about love after betrayal, guys. Can a man find love after betrayal? Hold tight. Give me 1 minute. And this was in my my infancy stage, guys. I've come a long way. Hold tight. I have come a long way in this YouTube stuff. But once again, guys, it's a lot of work. But the question is, can a man find love after betrayal? Have you guys been impacted by narcissistic women and also narcissistic relationships? So we're going to play this stream real quick. Hold tight.
Be here enough.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No doubt.
Yeah, so I got started doing this because, like most guys, have gone through this kind of thing in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Their history kind of defines who they are now. And so they go back and they say, well, how can I not repeat this mistake again in the future? So, I went through this kind of thing before. I'd grown up with a lot of toxic people in my life, and it'd taken a while to really kind of figure out what was going on. And I wanted to not be defined by that. I wanted to go towards what I really wanted in my life, which was to have a great and long-term relationship with a woman that I really wanted, the kind of woman that I always wanted.
Right.
And for a lot of guys, I think that's what they're looking for. They want that partner in life to take them where they want to go. Or not necessarily take them, but to, help support them in their passions and where they want to go and what they want to create in this life. And most guys.
And that's what every man wants. Teddy Pendergrass said, all I want is peace of mind. That's what every man wants. Every man wants peace of mind. Every man wants a woman that can more or less protect his ego. See, ladies, what you don't understand is that when a man's ego is protected, then he does not have to worry about you when he's at work. He does not have to worry about you mismanaging money. He does not have to worry about you more or less reaching out to exes. Many men want to feel protected. Their protection is how you protect his ego, which is his mind. That's why men need honor and respect in a relationship. That men need honor and respect. But if a man is not getting honor and respect, then he's not optimized and functioning at a high level. So that's why I need you ladies to learn how to protect this ego so that you can get the best outcomes for yourself, but it must be genuine. I did this show maybe over a year ago when I started the Manhood Chronicles and the Coach and Clinician, and I did it with Ed Baxter. He has a program called Love After Betrayal. And many men, guys, once they fall in love, and that's why I tell men they should never fall in love, they can be in a state where their ego and their psyche is impacted in a very negative and harmful way.
You may find out that they haven't really defined that. And that's a big thing too. So when I was going through this kind of stuff in the past, I've been divorced and I was also cheated on, and I didn't want to repeat that. And so guys usually come to me because they've gone through that kind of thing as well. And so that's how I serve them.
Right.
Is helping them navigate that. Little did I know that the kind of guys that really resonated with what I do ended up dealing with narcissism or sociopathy or really toxic women in general. Mm-hmm. And so the program that I put together actually deals with that directly. But how I kind of came about figuring this out was I just didn't want to go through it again. I wanted to figure out what was really the right way to make things happen.
Right.
And things can't be so complicated. You go online, like if you've been betrayed or you've been cheated on any kind of way, betrayal doesn't have to be just infidelity. She could betray you in 1,000 different ways.
Yes.
And, for men really, faithfulness, being able to be loyal, being able to trust your partner is like the number one trait men look for in a woman.
Yes. Yes. Right.
And you have to, because that's how nations are built, on loyalty.
Yes, sir.
And without that, you got nothing. And if you're worrying about what your wife's doing, you can't trust her to take care of the house. You can't trust her with your money. You can't trust her with your reputation or any of that stuff, or her sex, then you're not going to be able to move forward in your life. You're going to always be worried about what's going on at home. And it really detracts from everything that you need to be doing moving forward. And so our intimate relationships, I would say, are 70 to 80% of our happiness.
Yes.
Because of that.
Right.
You can't do anything until that is solid. Once that's solid and you have what you wanted in your relationships, then you find out that, hey, what else is there in life? And then you just naturally will go towards, what do I want to create? How do I want to be remembered? What's my legacy?
So it's I'm sorry, go ahead. Keep talking.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like to me that you feel that having, and I agree 100%, because, when you look at it in the esoteric, the man is a type of sun and the woman is a type of moon, and she reflects the virtues of the sun as it gives life to her. If that moon happens to get off orbit, then it becomes a cataclysm of epic proportions. So I agree 100%. Loyalty is paramount for men, because if a woman is loyal, a man feels like he can conquer the slaying dragon. I think a lot of men are wounded in this modern milieu called America because they don't have that loyalty. I think some modern women are very parasitic, and they come to the table expecting.
Once again, guys, that's part of that narcissistic supply. That's why, guys and ladies that are listening, it's not that men want to go out abroad and find traditional women, but they say there's not enough traditional women in America. These women have not been conditioned to be wives in America. Most modern women in America have been conditioned to serve themselves and their own purpose. That's why they put careers first. And sadly, some of the boomers are to blame. Some of the boomer men and women are to blame for telling their daughters to put careers first. I'm not against a woman getting her career, so make sure you hear me, because people will take what you say and run with it. But if you believe in family, your priority should be focusing on being the best woman that you can be with mind, body, soul, and spirit, so you can come into a relationship ready to become interdependent with your man, falling under his leadership. But once again, you can't get community back on par until you look at the dysfunction that caused the community to be in the negative place that it is in the first place. Until we talk about those issues, until the women that are advocating for marriage are actually marching on Capitol Hill, demanding that the laws be changed, don't ask men to give their service if that man is not going to be protected. Because remember, like Ed said, and like I said, part of masculine protection is protecting his ego. You have to protect the man's ego to make him feel comfortable as a man.
And they still giving. And what women don't understand, Ed, is that a man can be at his greatest apex when you have a woman that pours into him socially and spiritually and emotionally. But when she takes that love back from that man, and she's not more or less giving him those things that he needs to be successful, it leaves him in a very paradoxical, more or less distressing moment. What have you seen, Ed, in American men as you counsel them on the negative impacts of divorce, unfaithfulness, and other issues or other social malfeasance that's deleterious to their psyche?
You're asking me, how does it affect them when this happens?
Yes. What have you seen in your practice? What have you seen in your program? What are they telling you? What are the things that you're seeing that's caused these men to be in a state of disrepair?
Well, the thing is that men have the false belief that if they find the love of their life will be complete. Mm-hmm. That's the problem, and that's the hook. Right. And so because they put their entire identity on this, they get very nervous around women. They get insecure because their approval of him is what now makes him a worthwhile man. And whenever a guy is looking for the approval of a woman, be it, hey, she likes you, she wants to be with you.
That's why, guys, you should never fall in love. You should love a woman within reason. I'm not saying not to love your woman, but you should never fall in love, because once you fall in love, your sense of purpose become broken. And so now you're at risk for having suicidal thoughts, depression, and also having arrested development and having your purpose put on hold because you fell in love instead of falling in love with God and falling in love with your purpose. You should always love a woman within reason, because first, before Eve came, Adam was on his purpose and he was a worshiper of God. But some of you men have put the woman as an idol, and that's what Adam did when he allowed Eve to beset him. He put Eve as his purpose and his idol, and he lost out on his purpose and he lost out on his dominion because he put that woman before him. It's nothing wrong with loving your woman, but she should never come before God and your purpose. God and your purpose always come first, whatever God you believe in. Keep listening.
With you, she wants to have sex with you. These are ways that guys, they're looking for this approval from her. And when that happens, then it reverses what he needs to be doing in his life. If he's going and he's chasing after making her happy, then that's all he can do, because the feminine is all about variety and change and being one with nature, essentially, like flowing with life. Like kids, all children are very much in their feminine, right? They just are totally all over the place. They do what they want, they do what's fun, they're just flowing with life. Then there's positive and negative aspects of that. But women generally reside in that space. Now, they're not always in that space, obviously. They can do stuff. Some women are better men than men, unfortunately. But whenever the guy's going towards that, they're putting their whole basis and happiness on something that's ever changing and ever moving, and trying to figure out all the ins and outs and what she's doing and where she's going and why she acts this way and that way. And then he's confused because he's looking at all the content of what she's doing. Then he can never be solid in himself, because he's dedicating his whole life and everything that he's doing based on what she's doing. And she doesn't like that. She can't trust that. If you're like, put yourself in a place of the woman. If you're got your significant other, and you're trying to find a guy who's going to go somewhere in this world, who's going to do something, make something of himself, and you want to support that guy, but he's making his entire world about you, how can you trust that? If you give him a hard time and he completely just well, I don't want to deal with the fight, I'm just going to keep it peaceful, then how are you going to feel about his ability to go out in the world and kick ass? You're not. You're going to say, this guy is not strong at all. He can't even stand up to me.
Right.
You know, and women have the natural inclination to help men move forward. But sometimes it goes in the wrong direction. And you'll see it in the way that women are always like, hey, you should be doing something better. You shouldn't do this. And it kind of goes into nagging if it gets too far, or it goes into what she wants versus what's needed for the betterment of the couple and where he needs.
Shout out to my dear friend, I call it the Chocolate Smurf, Miss Parker back in basics. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that cash app. That super chat. She said, just blessings for my favorite content creator. Peace and blessings, KC. We so appreciate you. I appreciate you guys. It's those kind words, Smurfette, that makes me push and go even harder. Content creation is a lot of work. It's very time consuming. You have to be very creative and you have to do a lot of editing. Many times I'm up at night working hard behind the scene for you guys. So when you share and give and show your support, do monetary support and sharing content, it helps me as a content creator to continue to push through, because as a licensed therapist, I really don't have the time to be doing it, but I do it because I love you guys and I also love the brotherhood. And thank you to all the people. And I say thank you again for sharing the content. I give you guys a round of applause. Thank you guys. I love you guys for what you're trying to do as we try to get the movement moving.
Needs to go. So women will always be the first ones to tell you, hey, you need to stop smoking, you need to stop drinking, you need to spend more time with your kids, you need to make more money. They'll be the first ones to tell you that, because in their DNA is, what do I need to do to help him see what he's not seeing about himself?
Mm-hmm.
And a guy, his thing is not to just believe that, because if he did, then he would just be keeping the peace, right? He needs to look at that and say, okay, that's interesting. She says I'm doing this. Can I objectively look at this and see if she's right, and then make the immediate changes? And immediate changes is key. You don't want to be the kind of guy that's suffering to change all the time.
Right.
Or is she just saying this because she needs more attention or something else?
So it sounds, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, the whole point of, the question of what is it the guys need to do and how do they get all messed up with this, is they put their entire life in the hands of a woman. His whole identity, his fulfillment, everything. And women that are insecure, and toxic women, narcissism and not this kind of thing, are just high on the spectrum of high insecurity. And the more you're insecure, the more everything's about you, because you're looking for security. And when they're high in that, they're looking for him to make them feel secure, or to make them feel safe in some form or fashion, or give them whatever they, usually it's like they want money, they want the status, right? They want to be seen as high status. They want his money for the security of it, to get the things they want, and the other selfish things as well. But I mean, everybody is somewhere on that spectrum of selfishness. It's just a matter of degree. And typically the guys I work with are dealing with women high on that end. And quite honestly, they're perfect matches for the narcissist, because, for the narcissist, everything's about them. And for the guy, he can play the victim and say, well, everything's about her. It's never about me. And so a lot of the work that I do is teaching them, no, damn it, it is all about you. Your life is all about you.
Right. And I agree. So it sounds like to me that when men lose their purpose, Ed, and when they get off their, what I call their masculine axis, that's when their lives tend to implode or explode. And so what it sounds like to me is that you're telling these men that if you didn't have a purpose outside of this woman, that is the epigenesis to the downfall of relationships. Is that fair to say?
I would go even further to say, if you don't have an identity.
Yes, sir.
You have to have something to anchor to. You have to anchor to who you are and what it is that you want out of this life. That's what you have to anchor to. And that's what we do. That's the first thing. I mean, most of what guys deal with when they're going through this is because they don't have that anchor. And so they're just doing whatever they have to just make people happy, so that they'll like them, so that they grasp on whatever little they have. The thing is, you anchor into who you are, and you're very honest with yourself with who you are and what you want with your life. Then naturally your boundaries will start to come out when somebody tries to pull you off of that. Say you love going to jiu-jitsu, or you love boxing or something like that. And she says, you spend too much time at the gym. Why don't you spend time with me?
Right.
Maybe your career is very important to you and you're not spending unreasonable amount of time. You're not spending 16 hours a day, but maybe 10 hours, maybe 11 hours. You don't have kids with her. Or maybe you have kids with her and your career is very important. And you say, this is very important to me. I'm not going to give that up. She's like, oh, just take some time off. You work too much. You work too much. You work too much. And she'll whittle that away. And you'll work less and less. And now your career's starting to suffer. And now she's unhappy because you're not standing up to her.
And see, watch what's happening, guys. Now she's taking you off your purpose because you put that woman above your purpose. That's why it should be your principles as a man, God first, your principles as a man, and that woman should always come second or third. God, purpose, then the woman third. Because, see, when your ego is protected and your ego is intact, then you're going to protect her. But if you're vulnerable because you made her your purpose, then who's going to protect her? Because what she's going to do, she's going to leave your silly behind. Because women only respect power and strength. That's why divorce rates are so high. Because women are trying to replicate the man in their head that they once had, or the many men that they had. That's why your purpose should be first. I mean, God should be first, and then your purpose. Keep listening.
And now your career is suffering, and now you start falling. Now, maybe she's jealous because you have female friends, or you just have guy friends, but you're not putting all your attention onto her. Right. She's insecure. She wants to button you up as much as possible. And that's what she wants to do. She wants to make sure that she knows what you're doing, where you're going, because she's afraid you're going to jump off whenever you find out that she's not who she says she is, which ironically is what she's doing. Right? It's the classic projection.
Hey, let me ask you a question. When you look at, once again, modern relationships, what percentage would you say of women more or less exhibit this narcissistic trait? As a clinical therapist, we know that narcissistic personality disorder is a real mental health condition. But in your, from your anecdotal experience, what percentage of women would you say exhibit these narcissistic traits based on talking to the men in your program?
Well, I would be totally skewed if I told you that, because I deal with just about only that. And I really don't know, because I don't go out there and talk to enough women. I'm mainly spending all my time working with men. And I would say, but I mean, anecdotally, if I would look at it, how many people do I know in my life? And I know a lot of people exhibit these characteristics. And you know, what is it? Because I'm not a counselor or psychologist. I don't ever pretend to be. I'm a coach. And so what is the number? Like 2%, did you say?
Or did it have narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah. Or some kind of cluster B or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot higher than 2%. It's definitely a lot higher.
Well, I'll tell you, what they do is a lot bigger than 2%.
Right.
Because these women jump from guy to guy to guy. And so I would say 25% of men are dealing with this.
Okay, right. Gotcha.
That's probably the best way. And if you just do the math, let's say these women mess up 5 guys in their life, which we know is higher than that. Let's say 2% of those women, that's going to be, and if you just say men and women are equal, that's like 20% of guys right there. 5 different guys, probably low. Conservative numbers, probably 25% of guys have dealt with this. And you can see the signs, you know. Yeah, John's having a terrible divorce. His wife is trying to take him for everything. She's saying, you know, he got a restraining order, his wife got a restraining order, but he's never hit her a day in his life. You know? And you hear these stories and nobody knows what it is. But that's the signs of it. When you hear your friends talking about this, oh, I lost my friend Dave. I haven't seen him forever. This woman's terrible. She just wants his money, but he won't listen to us. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that. And he won't listen to you because he thinks he's struck gold. Because she's doing the first stage, which is idolizing him, mirroring him, being exactly what he wants. And they'll do this because, well, they want whatever he has. And they know that he's an easy mark, that he will kowtow to whatever her attitude is or whatever she does. And then slowly over time, she starts the devaluing phase where she starts saying, start belittling him a little bit at a time.
Again, guys, that's the love bombing. It's like the Venus flytrap. You guys ever seen a Venus flytrap where, you know, the Venus flytrap is very enticing. It's very alluring. But eventually, you know, that fly gets closer and closer to the allure of the Venus flytrap. And eventually that Venus flytrap would devour that fly because the fly got too close. And many times the narcissist will project what they really are onto you. Projection many times is a reaction to what they're really thinking about or feeling themselves. Classic projection is projecting what that person is feeling, and they're placing that projection of those feelings onto you. But also, guys, it's a condition called reaction formation. If a woman say, oh, I really love you and care about you, reaction formation is an ego defense mechanism, which basically means she don't really feel that way. So reaction formation is the opposite of how that person actually feels. But like Ed is saying, he's right. They draw you to them. And that's where the manipulation starts. Remember, manipulation, love bombing, and the classic one is gaslighting. Keep listening.
It's kind of like the foot in the door manipulation technique. And kids are really good at this too, right? Just 5 more minutes before they go to bed.
Right.
But they'll do this and say, well, just, you don't need to work so much today. They'll just start getting deeper and deeper in this until everything's suffering. And then now you can do nothing you do is right anymore. And then eventually you find her talking to guys, texting guys, and social media makes it really easy for these women to jump around from guy to guy.
Yes.
And then she just disappears. He's like, what the hell did I do wrong? I was doing everything I tried, everything
Right.
she wanted me to do, and she just made everything worse.
I call it the Ed effect, and I think based on conversation, you matriculated at Virginia Polytech, which is famously known as Virginia Tech University, Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech is a STEM school, and how have you more or less used the nuances of STEM to circumnavigate the web in modern relationships? What brought you to that nexus point?
Well, I guess I've always been an engineer. I just that's how most guys are. Most guys think like an engineer. Like, we're problem solvers. Men are problem solvers. It's just a matter of what you're training so that you know how to effectively solve a problem and ask the right questions. That's mainly where a lot of the training comes from. And then, of course, the skills like the math and all that stuff.
Right.
And so, when I was in college, I was doing industrial engineering, and industrial engineering is all about building a system. What are the small levers that make the biggest changes in a system? And usually it's applied to like a factory or something. Hey, how do we make things more efficient? How do we lay out the factory or any of these type of things to make things the most efficient? And look at the overarching system. The big thing that what is not looking at the trees of the forest, but seeing the forest for what it is. And then designing your forest the way it's supposed to be. And I've always been fascinated with relationships because I dated women in college that were definitely having mental issues and stuff like this, and trying to figure out what's going on with them, getting sucked up in what they're doing. And I did that even as an adult outside of college. And so when I was kind of getting disinterested in the career that I was doing, I was applying this type of methodology, like a systems approach to dating and relationships in general. So just taking all the big pieces and saying, what is actually real? What's actually working? What is the right parts and pieces? And coming up with a theory of everything. And then pulling out the pieces of that where it matters. And so when I build my programs or I work with guys, I look at it that way. Like, what are the parts that they need to button up that will make the effect overall? Right? I'm not just looking at, okay, he needs to fix this and that'll make him better. It's just like, I know what the path is for the guy, and then working the different levers, and then that's how it gets there. And people are just like narcissists and anybody else. People are very similar in the way that they do things, the way they approach things. And we all say, hey, we're all very different. We're all different individuals, and that's true. But we all generally act the same. We all generally react to things the same. And with common problems come common solutions. So that's generally how it works. I don't know. It's kind of a high level explanation.
Right. What was your Ed moment? And what I mean by Ed moment, most men come to this realization about the negative effects of more or less relinquishing their power in relationships. But and maybe you said it already. I know you said something about being in college. But what was your true Ed moment that brought you to the brink of despair, and how did you handle that?
It was during my when I found out that my wife was not being faithful.
Right.
Thank you, NC Recovering Wellness and Relapse, for that $5 super sticker. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. MC Wellness and Recovery said, I felt my identity slipping away and my focus from the family and goals being hard to get to, and people pleasing them, no doubt. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
And then I looked at it like, what did I do wrong? Well, what I did was I married what I call the 80% girl,
Mhm.
girl that was good enough.
Right.
Not this person I really wanted. And so in that circumstance, I didn't do everything I normally would have done if she was somebody I really wanted. And so she felt that.
Mhm.
And that led ultimately to her finding somebody who did. And me using, just allowing her to chase me so I felt secure. At some point, women will get tired of chasing you. And a lot of guys, they bank their entire relationship on, let your wife chase you, let your wife chase you. But if you don't let her catch you every once in a while,
Mhm.
she'll find somebody who makes her secure, I should say. And so I remember it, I was sitting in my bed and she was there, and I had this breakdown moment where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to try to be different than I am. I'm not going to try to manipulate women. I'm not going to try to do any of this stuff. I'm just going to be me, damn it. And if women don't like it, that's just too damn bad. And I've always been pretty anchored in who I am.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. And that's just kind of, that's more unique to me than most men. And I found that to be odd because, you see your world as you see yourself.
Right.
And I just didn't want to go through it again. I didn't want to end up like so many guys who.
Shout out to my man, Top Gun, for that $5 super sticker. And this is for James Turner. I know he want to hear that velvet voice. All I want is peace of mind. It's so hard to find. Shout out to my man, Top Gun.
That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
That's what every man want. Every man want peace of mind. And it's hard to find here in modern America. So shout out to Top Gun. We had to drop that fire for James Turner mind. I know
Fire
cognition,
for your mind.
Voice, man.
Kosher clinician.
After a divorce or a betrayal, they get bitter. And now they just don't trust women. They don't, and that would lock you down to having what you really wanted. So I said, well, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to go out there and do it even if it hurts. I'm going to live with an open heart no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, you can't get hurt. You can be disappointed,
Yes.
but you can't be hurt. That's really what it comes down to. You think that she's hurting you, but not really. It's just your expectations of things. And you wrapping your identity around that is what's hurting. The death of that identity that you wrapped up around this person is what's going. It feels like a real death. But I mean, you as a person, you can have bad emotions. You can have these things, but you can ultimately, what's inside of you cannot be hurt.
And what are you seeing in your program? And I know you work with with men that have similar themes or similar issues. But what are you seeing in this program that has left you baffled regarding the mental health of your clients? Give me like a case that you've seen and it shocked you. And at some point you found yourself maybe struggling to treat this person that had issues with their relationship.
I don't know if I've had one that's super baffling, but I have learned that people are on a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on this continuum, and the continuum is consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
How conscious are you or how unconscious are you?
Right.
There tends to be an inflection point somewhere in there. So if you take somebody who is completely self-absorbed and very unconscious, they're going to be looking to the external to make them feel better. And when they're looking to the external to make them feel better, they're trying not to look inside to resolve the problems. It's like having a hoarder's house. The inside of them is the hoarder's house. They don't want to open the front door. They open the door and it's a damn mess. They don't want that.
Right.
So they just keep the door shut, pretend it doesn't happen. They look into the external world to distract them, to make them feel good, and that's where, they get very materialistic. And when that runs out, when the fun and games run out, they'll even go to drama to distract themselves from what's going on inside. And this is what you see with these toxic individuals. And there is no way that they can have empathy, because in order to have empathy, you got to clean some house.
Right.
It's just not possible. And so they're really far in the unconscious state. In other words, they're not thinking about themselves. They're not really being true to themselves. They're just going through life looking for the latest entertainment And when they don't get the entertainment, they'll go for the drama. And this is why toxic individuals or people with a lot of mental problems.
And guys, they can't have empathy. They don't have empathy. They have not been conditioned to have empathy. The culture that we live in have not been conditioned to have empathy as it relates to the needs of men, black boys and black men and white men and white boys and Latin boys and men. Our world have not been conditioned to see, boys and men as human beings. That's why, like Sojourner Truth said in the past, am I not a woman? Well, many modern men are saying, am I not a man or a human? And many of you guys have been by what one of the guys said in the text, death by 1,000 cuts. Many brothers have been through that. Your hearts have been ripped out because of pain and hurt. And many times people just tell you to suck it up because we don't have an environment to help men process their pain. Shout out to Ray Johnson. And Ray Johnson, I appreciate that, brother. When I hear those kind of comments from you and Miss Parker and Luke Casely and all the others, Top Gun, and shout out also to James Turner for that $25 super chat or cash out. Thank you, James Turner.
That's a deal, right?
Thank you, James Turner, for that $25 cash out.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal,
James Turner,
right? That's a deal,
awesome.
right? Got 5 on it.
He is an awesome brother. Him and Tim Howard, Top Gun, Miss Parker, Back to Basics, Luke Casely, guys have been awesome. But when you guys contribute to the cause and share this content, it gives me the power to be encouraging. It can be very discouraging doing content because it's so time consuming, one. And when you put in hours and hours and hours, like the show I did with Commission last week was a 6-hour show that I put in behind the scene, and you don't get a turnout or people don't support it. It burns you up, but it's not for naught. And I got another good show coming up soon talking about the black church. It's going to be powerful. And I got one also talking about music therapy. So be on the lookout, guys. I got some fire content coming up. I got some fire for your mind, so I want you guys to get ready.
Fire!
Because I want to see black men liberated.
The culture.
I want to see good women protected, good black women protected, good black women that know the importance of protecting their men and loving their men. So Ray Johnson, thank you, brother, for those kind words. Thank you, sir.
Everything's about them. Everything is about them because they're suffering so much and they want people to help them. But as you know, they have to help themselves. Right. That's at the end of the day. And so then the other end of the continuum is a very conscious person. A very conscious person knows everything about themselves. They're always uncovering who they are. They're always looking to reserve their issues. That's what they're trying to do. And as they do that, they go up the continuum of consciousness. They become more spiritual. They become more heartfelt. They're more mature. They don't like drama. They live a very boring life, if you would look at it from the outside, because they don't have any craziness going on. They might have some adventures, sure, but the adventures are not there to distract them from what's going on inside. And so what I've learned is, we categorize people with narcissistic tendencies and all this stuff or whatever, or guys that are healthy or whatever, but really it's just people on a continuum. And so where I will get blocked, where I cannot help a guy, is if he's too far down on the unconscious side of the continuum. And every once in a while, and that's why we do calls before we let guys get a program to screen them out, because if they're too far there, they're not going to do the work. Right, they're just going to hit you up on a one-on-one call and they're going to vent to you for an hour. And all they're doing is they're just releasing the pressure out of the pressure cooker, but it doesn't take the water out of it. It doesn't solve the problem. In order to solve the problem, they got to look inside. Yes. And so, that's one thing we don't do. Like, you're not going to come and just bitch for an hour and then leave. It's like, no, you got to do the work. You do the work, brother, you'll get the results. But if you don't do the work, this is what's going to happen. Because, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. And I'm going to interject.
So every once in a while, we'll get a guy who has some serious mental issues. And I don't know what they are because I'm not a counselor, but I can tell that he just wants somebody to vent to or somebody to badger. And I've even had guys say, you're supposed to listen to me and just take it so that I can. I'm like, no, that's not what we're here for. We're here to grow. Men grow through challenge. I'm here to challenge you. If you're not going to grow, I'm sorry, you can't be on the program, because you're going to take away so much of my time and effort with very little results. Whereas I could be using that for guys who are going to use that result. I could help 10, 12 guys in the span that I'm helping one guy barely make any progress.
Well, it sounds like to me your process is very streamlined, and you are 100% correct. Even as a clinical therapist, I tell clients that I'm not the elixir or I'm not the panacea to your problems. You have to come in with a mind ready to work and to have a collaboration, do engagement. And the best results that I get from clients, Ed, are clients that actually want to work the process. So I 100% concur about your sentiment. Guys, out there in the media, please donate to the Cash App. Ed Baxter, the relationship expert. I call him the mechanical wizard. Please donate 7 small so I can continue these programs, because we need to get the message out so men like Ed can help men get on their purpose and continue to grow as men in this current malaise that we have. Ed, what do you think is happening in modern relationships, and how can men unwake the sleeping giant that lies within them?
They always have a choice. Mm-hmm. You might think you don't have a choice, but you do. You always have a choice. Mm-hmm. You don't have to hear anybody badger you. You don't have to, hell, you don't even have to come home after work if you don't want to.
Right.
Right? We're completely defined by our fears. Well, if I don't go home, I'm going to never hear the end of it. If I don't tell her what I'm doing, this is what's going to happen. If I don't do this, then men need to fight through fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. This is where your strength comes from.
Right.
On the other side of fear is confidence. You break through a fear, you go do something you didn't think you could do, you'll feel amazing afterwards. Your mm-hmm. confidence will spike up, mm-hmm. and you'll get a little bit more confident. And true confidence comes from competence. And so the only way to become competent is to keep pushing through your fears over and over and over again. And you are sovereign. Don't give up your sovereignty based on what other people want you to do. It's up to you to make your life happy. It's up to you to make things happen in your life. And you may say, oh, well, she put a restraining order on me. I can't go home to my kids. I'm living out of my car. I can't do anything. It's like, yeah, but you have, and you can feel sorry for yourself. And sure, you have been victimized, but being a victim is a choice.
Yes, right.
And you can sit there in your car and cry all night. That's fine. But then the next morning, you better get up and get after it.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Tap into your warrior spirit and make something happen.
Yes, sir.
That's where your power is going to come from. That's where your happiness is going to come from. And don't take that crap. You don't have to take anything from anybody. Right. The problem with men these days is that they've been taught to be compliant and complacent.
Yes.
And to just take whatever life gives them. No, fight. Men are designed to fight for what's right.
Right.
We are warriors for justice, and go for it. Go after what's right.
Right.
Don't be the sheep, man. Be the sheepdog. Go out there, chase off the wolves, and keep the herd in check.
Well, I call it the cream puff effect.
Cream puff effect.
Because I'm definitely a warrior and I'm definitely a fighter. I bow to no man. I respect all, but I bow to none. I never have and I never will. It's not in my nature to bow, but it is my nature to be diplomatic and try to find resolve and change. I titled this show, The Manhood Chronicles, Unwaking the Sleeping Giant, as it relates to relationships. What did you find out about that sleeping giant that Ed Baxter that gave him a greater love for himself and helping men overcome the hurdles that they're currently dealing with, Ed Baxter?
Well, when I was in project management and I used to do construction in the precast field, they said, hey, let's get Ed to be a project manager. And I'm like, okay. And I was incredibly afraid of conflict back then. Mm-hmm. And it was incredibly draining to me because I was always having to fight. And if you're in the construction world, especially when you're doing like massive multi-million-dollar prison projects, there's some contractors out there that will do anything they can to get an extra dollar out of you. And if you let them, you will destroy your project. You have what's called scope creep. Before you know it, you're doing all this stuff you're not supposed to be doing just because they'll yell at you and stuff like that. And so I'd get very stressed out about that. And I had to really get strong in who I was. And then it became apparent that as I started working the project and working other things in my life, that I realized that the stuff that I'm doing makes a whole lot more sense than what other people are doing. And so you kind of, at some point, there's an inflection point of competency where you're like, if you think that I'm doing something incorrectly, I'm not just going to believe you.
Right.
You have to show me. And then, put your ego aside and say, okay, he's right. Let's do it better. Be objective about it. But on the other hand, being very solid in who you are and the way you want to do it first, and make the other person prove that you're wrong, instead of just assuming, oh, I'm a fraud or I can't do this or anything like that. And that took some time. But then, at some point, when you start dealing with conflict, you start to like it a little bit. You start to like it, and you're like, okay, well, fine. If you want to tussle, let's tussle. We'll take it all the way. And then you find that, hey, you may lose. The whole point of it was just fear of loss. Men being afraid to have conflict with their wife or anybody else. It's just they're afraid to lose.
Hey, you made a very valid.
And so, guys, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys are afraid to have conflict? How many of you guys have been afraid to have conflict in relationships or with your wives? So many men are broken. They won't challenge their wives' bad behaviors. They won't challenge the girlfriend they're dealing with. They won't challenge her bad behavior. But once again, what men don't understand is contraindicated not to stand up for yourself. At the end of the day, it's better to have your dignity as a man than a woman that's not honoring and respecting you. And I know some of you men have been conditioned based on that dopamine. You have been conditioned to get that dopamine, the hope that she's going to change, the hope that she's going to always love you, because you have been induced by the love effect. But if you can't love yourself as a man and respect yourself as a man, she will never respect you as a man either. And that's why it's so important to put your purpose first. I'm going to end this at some point, guys, this particular show, but this clip that I had with Ed Baxter. And I'm going to bring a couple of guys up to share their stirring pain about narcissism, and also the women that have been impacted by narcissistic personality disorders.
Valid point. Somebody used to, share with my dad when I was young. I said, in order to have peace, you must have war. A lot of men try to more or less not get involved in conflict because they see conflict as something negative to the relationship. But I say conflict is essential to overcoming barriers. Before there can be peace, there must be war. And that war that I mean is that you have to get to the nexus point where you can identify the problems that are causing a chasm in the relationship and find ways to not only address it, but to let the woman or man in your life know that you're not going to tolerate it. I'm not confrontational by nature, but I will confront you if I have to. I always have and I always will. But tell me what conflict and more or less, Ed, dealing with that conflict is so important in relationships. And so many men have what I call the cream puff effect.
What do you mean by cream puff effect?
Well, they're just weak. They don't stand up for principles. They don't stand up for virtues. They don't stand for anything. They just kowtow and they just let things be instead of challenging and expressing how they feel.
Yeah. And what's interesting is even if you put a group of people together and you say, let's resolve everything peacefully, what happens? Now the conflict gets quieter and more insidious. Now it becomes very quiet and manipulative. The conflict's still there. It's just not so loud. Right. You can see that now, like in the world. Like some of it's loud and some of it's very creepy. Some of it's very like, I'm just going to trick you into doing this kind of thing. And you must shine the light on it and say, no, you're doing this, and bring it out to a loud conflict. Show.
All right, guys. So you can see that show. It's called Love After Betrayal. If you have not seen it, click on the link and finish looking at that show at some point. I don't want to bore you guys out because we know your attention span is very short. But I'm going to drop the link, guys. I want some of the brothers and the women to come in. Let's call in. I know some of you guys are at work, but I want you to call in and add to this stream about the impact of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. So I'm going to drop the link, and we're going to have a powerful discussion. Hold tight. Hold tight, guys. We'll have a powerful discussion. So let's have a discussion about narcissism, narcissistic traits, but also narcissistic personality disorders. I stopped that because I know it's putting you guys to sleep, and I want to add to the conversation. So any men or women that want to come up and add to the conversation about the experiences that they have had about people that exhibited narcissistic personality disorders or more or less had the traits, and how it played a very negative or more or less profound impact on your psyche as a man. So, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it because these conversations are very important. Can narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic traits impact the mental health of a man? And based on what Ed Baxter has said, based on the evidence from a foundational perspective, from a clinical perspective, and from an experience perspective, yes, it can. It can definitely impact them. And so, guys, that's why it's so important for you guys to have these conversations. It's very important. Right. Well, yeah, but thank you, Luke Hayes. I appreciate this with you. You know, you are intellectual. Sadly, intellectuals don't get bored over intellectual stuff, but sadly, some do. So I got MC Recovery and Wellness, and he's a good brother. How you doing, MC Recovery and Wellness? How you doing, sir?
Hey.
How you doing, brother? What's going on, man? How would you like to add to the conversation about narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder? How would you like to add to the conversation?
Oh, man. When you first was playing it, man, this is like, my head was saying this is real triggering for me. So, so I may get choked up in certain areas, but like
it's
I
okay,
put
brother.
in,
It's okay.
like,
It's all right.
like I put in the tab, it happened not only once, but twice.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and your guest was hitting on the nail. That's why I put that second Cash App thing in there, because it was like, it's like this space, manosphere, just allowed me not to no more know that I wasn't going crazy.
Yes, sir. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
because your show, because she would say my mother hurt me, and then that would get me to thinking like, where did my mother hurt me? Where do I'm looking? Well, I know I got whoopings, but what else did she do? She hurt me, but not to the capacity when you got to argue every week. It was like right at the time I start seeing these traits. It was like I start seeing what to look out for when and then I said, dang, I just kept ignoring red flags.
Mm-hmm.
Red flags, because when you dealing with a person and then they looking through your personal photo album and they see you with that ex-girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
and they do something funny to her picture, like scratch the face, and then next time you come back you see a cigarette butt right on that person's face. Stuff like that was going on. But what really was hurting me was me not be wait, I put people pleasing. So
Right.
it putting me in a position of people pleasing.
Right.
And then both of these people that I went with was involved in recovery, but that don't mean because you're in the rooms of recovery that you're really working on yourself. That you like, you got a sponsor, you trying to clean house. Clean house basically mean you working with a sponsor to take a better look at yourself from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So you do your 4-step inventory.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened to me, instead of them working on themselves, they would work on the other individual. Like things on TV. Why you don't say you love me every day? Why you don't bring me flowers? Why you don't do this? Why you don't do that? And then you bring up the time when you did it, and then that's all that manipulation stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of work, and but what I could say today about my son's mother is that she has been doing writing. She has been listening to a lot of meditation music and stuff for that. But from afar, it looks like things is okay, but you still see little chips of it not really gone. But it then got better. So I see she's working on her weight. And before your show started, I got a phone call from my son's school, right? That he's down there going out of control a little bit, up and down. Do talking in class, can't stay still, not staying on task, and stuff like that. Me and his mom will have an argument on that. So it's like that happened at school. So I got to keep all that to myself because when you bring it up to her, she puts a whole lot more on it. To where that's what he got. He got it real bad, dude. He got the ADHD. He got this, dude. And then I'm saying it's not that because last week he finished all his work. We went to Dave and Buster. This week, last 2 weeks ago he finished all the work. Last week he started picking up pace Wednesday. But he didn't want Dave and Buster.
Right.
So he's basically being himself. And what I told the therapist on the phone, that I told my son that this will create him as a bullseye. But what I think happened with this bullseye, that so many teachers or individuals is putting a lot on it to now they're affected.
Right.
Meaning every time they look towards his way, they're looking for something. And this is what I basically learned, 15 years at the county, 22 years of recovery, you start to see these kind of things that, so, that's about it. But this one, like, if I send this to my son's mother, she would take it as a way of me trying to prove I'm right.
Right, because they can't accept accountability. It's not in their nature. Narcissists can't accept accountability. They don't have empathy. It's always you. You always the problem. Minto Flight, how are you doing, brother? How would you like to add to the conversation? How are you doing, sir?
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
I've been waiting for you to do this show a long time.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And I believe in what you're doing. And I've been praying for someone like you to come into this space, because I truly felt like a lot of other men feel is that, people say go get therapy, but how can you sit down with a therapist who can't relate at all to what you're going through?
Yes,
all
sir.
they're going to do is waste your time and put it back on you as though you're the problem. And I've heard this several times that, even in marriage counseling, it's always back on the guy. So a lot of these counselors, in my opinion, aren't qualified to help me with what I'm going through. So thank you for what you're doing, and just keep hold the line and keep the faith and keep doing what you're doing, because in time your channel is going to grow. All of it's going to come in time, faster than you know it. I'm gonna try to be as succinct as I can. I have a lot to unpack, and I'm gonna try to be as succinct as I can, because a lot has happened to me. I have had a lot of these people in my life.
Let's talk about
it.
Let's talk about it.
They have a saying that you go from the frying pan to the fire. Well, I went from the frying pan to the oven to the fire. I was born in North Carolina, in Laurinburg, North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And I was born to a schizophrenic mother.
Oh, bless your heart.
And I also have a twin brother. And mental illness runs deep in my family. And I thank God that it bypassed me to where I can live some type of functionable life as a leader, as a patriarch that I want to be in my family. To try to fix the generational curses in my family, it takes a certain mentality to be able to do this. So I thank God for the brain that I have, that I was gifted not to have schizophrenia myself.
Yes, sir.
So my mother, at 3 months old, she stabbed my father in the eye, almost killed him. And as a result, he ended up leaving the relationship. And we ended up in foster care because my mother tried to kill me. My mother broke almost every bone in my body. And social services took us from my mother and left my sister there with her.
Right.
After that, they asked my father, hey, your kids are going into foster care. We're going to give you an opportunity to get your kids. And he told them, I have nothing for them. How I know this is because almost every day of my life, my adoptive mother, who was the next individual like this, she made it very clear, even your own family don't love you. And she was. There were good times. I was adopted. My father was a pastor. We were raised in South Carolina, Marlborough County, and my father was a pastor and a businessman. You can look all these people up. My father was named Reverend Judge F. Warren, and we were on CNN, National Enquirer. We were celebrities because my parents had adopted 9 of us, and they had 6 of their own, and they had hundreds of foster care children. I used to change diapers. I used to see all type of foster care situations, and so I've learned a lot. And I also used to take care of my sister's children when they were away. So I grew up very fast, I had to, and I grew up in South Carolina in the corridor of what's called the corridor of shame when it comes to education. So I had a lot to overcome.
Right.
And the third person in my life who I call the fire, because I went from the frying pan, which was my biological mother, to the fire, which was my adoptive mother. She was very abusive, very narcissistic. And then I went to the oven, which is my baby mama terrorist.
Let's talk about it.
This woman has tried. She came into my life. We met at a club in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, at the time, I was a ladies' man. I was a player, and I was young. I was 22 years old. I was glad to be on my own. I was in college at a black college, and I was meeting people, doing things, learning things, and just, exploring the world, trying to find myself in the world and what I wanted to do. I was in college, all that good stuff. I was working. I was working at a hotel downtown. I was successful. I even knew the mayor around that time that I met this young lady. I knew a lot of people. I knew celebrities. I knew a lot of people. I came up in Charlotte. And this young lady, if I could go back in time, man, I would delete the moment I met her. Because this person came into my life, so subtle, seemed like, the signs were there. I was not taught how to pay attention to them. I didn't recognize what I was dealing with. And by that time, this person, just like the other brother said, this person was in my life all the way. I remember one time I left her at my condo, and she went through I will never let a woman stay at my place unattended ever again because of what she did. She went through all my personal confidential information, pulled all phone numbers, social security numbers. And this is one I maybe knew a month. And she had went through all my private personal information almost illegally, in my opinion. Even contacted my adoptive parents at 7 o'clock in the morning, woke them up. They didn't know who this woman was, asking about where I'm at. And that was a big sign for me. And then I started seeing her, started showing up at my place unannounced, on that stalkerish type of vibe, right? And her behavior was nice, but it was very overbearing.
Right.
It was like that love bombing situation. I was able to get sex on demand. I was able to see other women, no problem. I was able to do what I wanted to do. But those signs started showing up. And I remember one time I had another lady at my place, and she showed up, and the lady was about to step to her. And I said, no. And that was the moment when I said, okay, I gotta get myself away from this lady. I gotta let her down easy because I'm a gentleman. I didn't, just pump and dump women. I used to let them down easy, in a way that they could respect and understand. So, they don't be damaged when they go into the next guy. So as I got one foot out of the door, man, that it's like perfect timing. Boom, she's pregnant. And that's when I realized I had a big problem. And that's when the mask came all the way off.
Yes, sir.
This person, she came to my life. She was already a single mother when she met me. And she wasn't all the way honest about that with me.
Right.
And she knew I didn't understand. I was 2 years old. I was a country boy from the South, grew up very sheltered,
Yes, sir.
Christian,
Yep.
preacher's son. I didn't know a lot about life.
Yes, sir. Same here. You and I
And
grew up
so-
similar. I'm from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Grew up in the church.
Yeah.
Pentecostal Holiness Church of God
Yep.
in Christ.
I was in church 7 days a week. My father is Reverend Judge Felton Warren. A lot of people know who he is down there. He was. You can look him up on Google Maps. Go to Google Maps and type in J. Warren Lane, Wallace, South Carolina. That's my father, the man that raised me from 3 months old.
Okay.
And so that's one reason I connect with you, Mr. Coach Clinician, because I grew up in North Carolina, so I can relate to you on a deeper way. I just left North Carolina because of so much that I went through, not because I wanted to leave North Carolina, it's because I had had enough. From the top all the way down to the bottom, I was done. And so when this woman became pregnant, man, that's when the nightmare started and has not stopped. My life I'll never be the same because of this person. I was, trying to get myself to the next level in life. I have a friend who's a celebrity. My mentor is a celebrity, big time actor. A lot of you know who this guy is. He's in that same lane as Denzel and Spike Lee. I won't say his name, but he came into my life around that same time. And I was getting acting work. I was working as an actor, and that led to me getting into the airline business. And I'm doing both as we speak now. I'm in the airline business and I'm an actor as well.
Oh wow.
I'm connected, So this woman is seeing all this. She's seeing me come up. So I asked her. I said, "Why did you decide to keep this baby and get pregnant and move forward with this? Why did you decide to get pregnant in the first place from me?" Because she had said she had 2 abortions, and she was a single mother already. And she was living with her parents. She was in no position to have a child again. She said, "Because I see potential in you. I see you're going to be somebody, and I want to keep this baby."
Right.
So I said, "Okay, that's fine. I'm going to be a responsible father. I'm not ready to be a father, but that's okay because I was adopted. I am not going to let this happen to my child, what happened to me. So I'm going to be there for this kid." I looked her father and her mother in the eye, and I promised them that I would be there for this kid. But you're not going to put my life on hold. I just got into this, got away from all the bullshit I had to deal with growing up. I just got my freedom, and now you're taking it from me again. No, I feel what you're doing. You're not going to use this child to force me to be with you, because I had already felt like if I did that, I would be surrendering my future, and I'm not having that. So she became very resentful about that. And then unfortunately, I had went to training at the same time that he was born. I had to, because I didn't have no other way to provide for this kid. So I missed the birth of this child. Right. It wasn't that I wanted to, it was I had to. But as soon as the plane touched down in North Carolina, the first thing I did was go get my son. I remember the day I looked into his eyes, everything changed for me. I was trying my best to be the best father I could be, while also trying to deal with this person. And everything I did was it was always something, like, something to complain about. No matter what the hell I was doing, it was always something.
Yes, sir.
Just nitpicking, always something.
Yes, sir.
And here I am trying to, go along. And I was like this with every aspect of my life, even in my professional life. I was a big time people pleaser. Even as a kid, my adopted mother used to get on me about being a people pleaser. And I thought I was doing the right thing, until I realized that I'm neglecting my own best interests by trying to please other people. There's a guy on YouTube, he says, "Pleasing you is killing me." And I realized even my finance, everything about me was just out of order.
Right.
And I remember, some of the things she did to me, I was just like, yo, this can't be normal. I remember she tried to run me over with her SUV. If I wouldn't have moved out of the way, because when she was approaching me with the vehicle, I'm like, there's no way this woman is doing this to me right now.
Right.
She's going to stop this truck. She's about to run me over.
Right.
I got to jump out of the way. She's really about to do this. She had our son, in the back of that vehicle, in the seat, not restrained in the car seat. And he ended up, as she took the turn trying to kill me, she ended up knocking him out of the car seat. Wow. And almost and caused harm to him, could have killed him. Wow. And none of that matters. We were on a high-speed chase on 85. I'm trying to get away from her, and she's chasing me. We're doing 100 miles an hour down 85 in Charlotte. I come outside my apartment, secured with a gate. I'm living in a gated community, and she's on my foot on the steps of my home for hours, stalking me. Social media stalking me, and it's getting more and more egregious, more and more pervasive, more and more bold, more and more dangerous. And her parents are allowing her to do this. She's living with her parents. She's even telling me how she wanted to use her parents. And I started really seeing this person as a narcissistic, selfish individual.
Yes, sir. Right.
And it made me say to myself, like, damn, like, how did I keep myself open to allow this person to penetrate me this deep to get a kid out of me? So, she showed up at my job one time, tried to get me fired from my job. It was all this type of, she was constantly like calling me, harassing me, cursing me out, texting me. Calling me like in a harassing, violent way, just constantly. I mean, if I would hit the ignore button, she would just keep calling, keep calling. If I turned the phone off for 2 hours, turn it back on, keep calling, keep calling, keep calling. And every time I would pick up, just yelling, berating me, cursing me out. And I'm just like, hey, like, don't talk to me like that. I'm trying to reason with this individual. And the more I try to reason with her and get along with her, the more she gets enraged, violent, and just abusive.
Right.
Meanwhile, I signed myself up for child support because I knew some people say I was stupid, but I don't think so. I'm a very smart person with a high IQ. I was able to see this person 5 years down the road say that I never paid her a dime in child support. And I was like, you know what? I know what type of person I'm dealing with.
Right.
Let me go ahead and sign myself up for child support right now, because I'm not going to wait 5 years down the line and then she walk her ass in there and say, he didn't give me a dime. I'm not going for that. Right. So I'm not as dumb as a lot of people who accuse me of that. I was very smart because I was able to see the future with this person. Mm-hmm. So as I'm, trying to keep a safe distance from her, and I even quit my job and took another job because I'm in the airline business. I put my acting career and airline career on hold, took a 9 to 5 because she said I needed to be home more. And I'm like, hey, I'm out flying. I can't be home. I'm acting and flying, and I'm being a father.
Wow.
She would do stuff like call me. I was based in Chicago at one of the times.
Yes, sir.
She called me. I'm in Chicago. Hey, something's wrong with our son. Can you, and I call off work, fly standby all the way down to Charlotte, drive an hour to the house, only to find out, oh, nothing was wrong with her. I just wanted to see what she was going to do.
Oh my God! Wow.
She did stuff like that. She also did something like she left me immediately and let me finish. She got with another guy. I won't put his name out there. This guy ended up coming to me like, hey man, what's wrong with your baby mama? I said, look, you are not obligated to be with this woman because this is my kid. And when I first met him, we had a conversation. Do not discipline my kid. I will be the one doing that, not you. And I did that in front of her, in her house with her mom and dad there. They allowed her to be reckless. So when the relationship was over with this guy, my son was about 2 years old. Don't you know that she contacted me and said, my ex-boyfriend touched our child. And it made me naturally enraged. And so I contacted a lady I was dating, and she said, ask her one question. When did you take him to the doctor, and what did the doctor say? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was like, that don't make no sense. Why would I ask her that? As soon as I asked her the question, she said, oh, I just said that because I'm mad at him and I wanted to, she was pretty much saying she was being spiteful. That's how evil this person is. So she was going to put me in a situation to destroy both of us.
Right.
And possibly even the kid. That's how reckless this situation became.
Right.
And she kept every chance she got, she showed me why I needed to get the hell away from this person.
Right.
And now our kid is in his teens now, and I'm to the point where I don't want nothing to do with it. I've washed my hands and moved on. She, the final straw for me, other than her parents disrespecting me, her turning my family against me, using my family, manipulating my family to believe that I'm a deadbeat, social media stalking, putting me out on the internet saying I'm this and that. The final straw for me was I was in the Philippines, and we had been going through a bitter custody battle. And she didn't even, let me rewind. What made me go to get custody, and I'm trying to wrap this up. Okay. What made me go to I had enough. I had gotten tired. It was like this cycle where things would be good for a month, and for 3 months, I wouldn't see my kid. Things would be good for a month or 2 or 3 months, and then a year, I wouldn't see my kid. It was like this. I felt like I was a yo-yo on a string. Whenever she wanted to pull my kid away from me, she'll just pull him away. She'll find a reason, any reason at all. I sneeze wrong, music too loud, you can't see your kid. She would make excuses as to why I couldn't see my kid. And I got tired of the cycle. Either you in or you're out. But we're not doing this yo-yo game. Either you want a father in this kid's life or you don't.
Mhm.
So what did it for me was my adoptive mother had passed away in 2017. And she told me she's overweight. I tried to get her to lose the weight. She refused to. And she also made our kid overweight, got him on all type of ADHD medicine. I mean, everything that a baby mama terrorist does, she's done. And she, let me get my train. Oh, okay. So I'm driving an hour away. It's 2016. And I'm driving 2014, and I'm driving November 2014. I'm driving to pick him up. We had agreed on me picking him up, and she calls me and say, if you don't feed him McDonald's, pretty much, if you don't give him junk food today, you can't take him to your mother's funeral. She gave me an ultimatum. Either you feed him this food, or you don't get to take him to his grandmother's funeral. And I said, okay, I got to compromise. I got to agree I got to do what I got to do to get him. But after this, I got to start considering, going down the custody battle. I don't want to do this because I'm not that kind of person. I don't like to fight. I don't like confrontation. And then what really sealed it was when I went to get him one time, I went all the way to the house and he wasn't even there. She purposely told me to come get him, and then he wasn't even there. Not to mention all the time she was violent. I remember one time I took him to Phoenix, Arizona. I came back. I had to bring my best friend at the time because she was ready to, again, attack me. And a high-speed chase situation. And he got out of the car and checked her and said, hey, if you want your kid tonight, you need to get your ass back in this car.
Right.
Her father comes rolling down the street, and I lost all respect for him. He said, don't you know it's cheaper to keep her? He's getting on me about his daughter being reckless.
Right.
So I'm doing everything I can to get along with these people, but they're not doing anything to get along with me. Mm-hmm. And so as much as it broke my heart, I had to say, okay, let me go down to this courthouse. This is not real. And I knew I wasn't going to have the outcome that I wanted when I went down to the courthouse, but I needed to get it on record so my child would know I fought as hard as I could to be in your life. And I wanted society to know that I'm not the deadbeat that this woman is going around saying that I am. So I filed, and I ended up in a 4-year horrible custody battle, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up, the process is so you got to sit through this class. You got to take off work. You got to sit and watch this old 1990s video. They roll this TV into the courtroom and make everybody sit and watch this video about how to get along as parents. And when I'm sitting there, like, it's not me that's the problem, it's her. I'm just sitting there being quiet. I'm just going through the process, but I'm like, this is a waste of my time, her time, tax money, all this shit, because this woman is the problem. You go through all that, then you got to go through mediation. In mediation, I said, listen, this was the first time I was able to try to get an answer as to why you are doing this. Why can't we get along? What is the reason that you're being so difficult? She looked at me and told me, I just don't want you in his life. I said, listen, and she just got up and just walked out of the mediation. And the mediator made me sit there for 30 minutes as if I'm the one that's going to attack her outside, when I'm the one that's concerned about my safety. She's made death. Yeah.
My heart goes out to you, man. I got to get to the office in a few minutes, but I would love to have you back up, man, to share your story, or have you just as a special guest. And maybe I bring Ty back because Ty is part of the program of Ed Baxter called Love After Betrayal. Do me a favor, Micto Flight, reach out to me, man, at coachingcondition@gmail.com. Share this content, guys. We need to get this content out because many men are dealing with psychopathologies. Many men are the victims of narcissistic personality disorders. And Ty's going to talk about that in a few minutes. But reach out to me, Micto Flight. Put your number in. I'm going to call you at some point. We can do a non-diagnostic consultation if you want to talk, or or we can just talk for a few minutes as men. But I do want to bring you back, man, because your story is powerful. And, the message needs to get out, man. But I want to Ty to speak. I got to get out of here and I got to get to the office. But
hey, can I say one more thing before you close?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother.
Again, thank you for your time. And I will be reaching out. there is a flip side to this, because this is I want to explain in the future how I ended up becoming a MGTOW and how I took charge of my life.
Yes, sir.
And it came at a big sacrifice. I had to cut a lot of people off my life in order to get to where I'm at now, and I'm still doing the work. And part of that work is that consultation I want to have with you.
No doubt, man. I look forward to it, brother. I love you. My heart goes out to you.
Thank you.
That's why black male mental health is so important. You know, Luke Hazley, you asked a question. Sadly, Luke Hazley, I'm 20, they don't really care about the needs of mostly American men, but especially black men, because black men have never had the wherewithal to get mental health counseling. That's why it's a licensed clinical therapist coming from the greatest state in the union, the Tar Heel state. I seek to empower men. I started this journey back in 2009, and I've always had a love for male empowerment, but seeing black men and black boys and all men empowered, because many times most of the therapists that are trained in most liberal schools are trained from what's called the feminist theory lens. And so one way we can get the message out is by sharing this content. I will start my own practice at some point, and maybe I can have a specialty that more or less focuses on male rights and men rights. But it's an upgoing balance, an upheaval, because traditional masculinity is under attack. And many times it's pushed to the side because, as Michael Jackson said, they don't really care about us. So reach out to me, MGTOW Flight, man. We're going to make it happen. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you, sir. Can you hear me? Did you hear me, MGTOW? Okay. Ty, what's up,
yes,
brother?
sir. I copy that. Thank
All
you.
right,
And
man.
I'll be in touch today.
Yes, sir. Thank
It's
you.
on my to-do list. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ty, what's up,
Yes, sir.
brother? How you doing, man? I thought about you, man. It must have been the Thundercats, man. You know, it must have been the called the Thundercat Symposium. You know, you're looking all day, but you don't represent the Leos. Man. You got me. You got me twisted, man. You represent the Leos. My lyrics all about you, man. I said, man, I heard from Ty in a minute, and you popped in, man. So how are you doing, brother? How would you like to add to the conversation?
Yes, I'm doing great. Can you first before I
I can hear you perfect. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Perfect. So I wanted to jump in. I see we were on live earlier, and I came in and I heard this other story. I said, yeah, let me jump in and speak. So for those who don't know, I'm Tyler. I'm an image coach, also a relationship coach. I help guys move on after well. With Ed Baxter, we have a program for guys who are going through the same situation that other was just sharing. When it comes to relationships in general, I believe that this is something that we need teaching in schools. A man could be a law-abiding citizen and get his freedom taken away, get his kids taken away, get his money taken away if he's get with the wrong woman, right? And the reason why this stuff,
you got an echo, brother.
Echo?
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, you got a serious echo.
All right.
Make sure you got YouTube closed out or on silence, man.
Yeah, there's no other coming through, so I don't know what it is.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Yeah, it's a lot of
let me try to change the anything.
That's better. There you go. That's a lot better, Ty. Yes, sir. That's perfect.
All
That's
right.
perfect.
So
Go ahead,
I believe that this information about relationships should be taught in schools, right? Because we as men get into relationships with women and we believe she's pretty, she's nice, I like her, I want to make something with her, right? And the things that you gain from a woman, the softness of their voice, the intimacy, the companionship, the laughter, all those things feeds a man in an emotional way. And then we just like a drug, we get addicted to those feelings. And when she starts acting up, if she has some mental health issues, she starts acting up, we try to fix her so we can get those feelings from her again. Now, we don't see it this way. We don't think about it that way, but that's what's happening under the hood. And then you try to change the women. And the thing is that you get with these women and they were this way before you even knew their name. She was like this before you knew her. Her family knew this, but you didn't know that. And because we have these emotional needs, we continue. It's like taking a drug. It's like, I know the drug hurts me, but it feels good when I'm drunk, or it feels good when I'm high. That's what the woman is. She becomes that drug for us. And now you tolerate all this bad behavior, trying to fix her, right? So one of the things, and when a man goes through a situation like this, he has to heal properly. He has to. All women aren't like this. But if you allow this stuff to happen, this will be a part of every man's life. You have to always put yourself first in these situations, and when you don't put yourself first, then you're susceptible to this type of behavior. And like I said, you see what the brother went through.
Right.
I mean, I've spoken to over 1,000 men. Maybe I'm probably at 1,500 men at this point. And I've heard it all. I've heard every story from guys being locked up for 6 weeks. The woman lies on him. He gets arrested. She takes all the money out the accounts, so he can't even bail himself out. He spends 6 weeks in the county prison. Right? That's he's away from his family, away from his job, away from his people for 6 weeks. These are things that women can do to a man just because you love the wrong woman. Right? So these things we can't be playing around with women like this. It's not a game, because the society is on their side. Right. Society believes them. All they got to do is cry. All they got to do is tell a story. Society's going to believe them. And that's the way it is. That's why we can't play games. We can't go out here thinking that if we cry that people are going to come to us, because you call the cops on a woman, the cops going to laugh at you. That's what our society has created. So you have to be very proactive when it comes to relationships with women. Don't get caught up with a nice booty, nice breasts, a chick who's, she's pretty and all that stuff. Don't get caught up with that. And that's what we teach guys. That's what we help guys move on from that.
How's those programs, Ty, help the men, in your opinion? I got about 5 to 10 minutes before I sign off, but how do you feel the programs have helped a lot of the men that you're dealing with? And what did you get from this show when you were listening? Because a lot of men are, a victim of women that actually do a lot of gaslighting. They do love bombing. They get the man in that negative trap where that man loses his sense of identity and purpose. But how do you feel like the program have helped a lot of the men that you've been talking to? And Ty, we talk about all the time in the past, you were one of the original brothers, man, that started off with me when I first started this platform, or actually was on Facebook, called the Manhood Chronicles. And it's similar to what Mick Flight is talking about, men telling their story and telling their pain. And I see why men have an aversion towards therapy. But I would say this, I heard somebody say, don't give your money to counselors. Well, they shouldn't give their money to counselors that don't seek to advocate for black men. But every man needs to go through at least one consultation at one point in his life to find out, to help him understand the things that have caused him to be in a state of disrepair. Because many times narcissists tend to play off empaths, because empaths feed that narcissistic supply. And many times, we've been conditioned as men to be servants of modern women. Therefore, we put ourselves at a disadvantage where we can have our inner sanctum violated. So, I do agree that many modern therapists don't seek to understand black men or men in general, because they see black men and men as the problem. But how would you say, Ty, in about 5 minutes, and I have to go, your program has helped you, but also helped a lot of men? And have you seen men relapse back into those negative traits from the past?
Yeah, so we mainly have 6 steps, right? So usually what happens when a man gets into a bad relationship where the woman is disrespecting him, he put that woman above him. Way before the disrespect started, he put that woman above him. He put her on a pedestal. The feelings, the emotions, the stuff he put up above him. That's the only reason why he would tolerate abuse, right? Because imagine if you had a job and the job started to abuse you, right? They start saying, okay, you're going to be off at this time, but no, you got to stay 3 hours later. And if you don't stay, you're going to get fired. You would leave that job, right? If they cut your hours or they cut your money, you would leave that job. Why are we tolerating so much from women and not leaving them? Because we're attached emotionally. And that's the thing that men don't see. We as men try to figure them out. Let's figure it out. I'll solve the problem with my problem solving brain. It doesn't work, because there's emotional things that you don't see going underneath the hood. So in our program, the first step is we have to get a man having emotional control, stopping him from trying to chase her, stopping him from trying to need emotional validation from her, so he can get back to himself. Then we teach him, and the second step is we got to teach him woman's nature. We have to show him what he was doing, like what he's saying and what she hears, what she says and what he hears, but what she's really saying. He has to understand woman nature so he can see where things went wrong, right? Then we have to get him back to himself. We have to help him identify what he's doing, get him out of that low emotional space. The low emotional space is going to get him to get into another relationship that's going to be just as bad, because he needs those emotional voids that she left when he left her, or she left him. He gonna need those emotional voids filled. He gonna get another woman. He can't see her for who she truly is.
Right.
As long as she making him feel good. So he end up in another bad relationship. So we gotta get him over that. We have to get him over the woman so he's not doing things for her. I'm gonna work out so she be attracted to me. I'm gonna live my life so she be mad that she left me. It ain't about her. We gotta get you to move on from her completely so you can start living for yourself. Then we get him to identify what is his purpose in life. That is what the man is supposed to, his focus in life is supposed to be targeted on his focus forever. He never lose sight. Once a man lose sight off his purpose for any short period of time, that's when he starts failing.
You're right.
And what he ends up doing is he starts focusing on her. Now I'm gonna give this quick analogy and I'm gonna wrap it up, right? So here's what I tell men on the calls, okay? Men and women are not the same when it comes to your purpose, okay? Society judges us men based on our success and our achievements, and we as men gain a sense of fulfillment when we achieve.
Yes.
Time is on our side as men because men get better with age.
Right.
You should be more successful today than you were 10 years ago, and you're going to be more successful 10 years from now than you are today. Now, women, on the other hand, they don't see it that way. They don't live the world that way primarily because they have babies.
Right.
And in order for them to fulfill the duty that nature put upon their body, they have to be with a man.
Right.
They can't get pregnant by themselves and they cannot properly take care of a kid by themselves. That's why they have a tendency to follow men. Now, women want to be with a man that's going somewhere. Your vision is where you're going. If you're chasing after a woman, doing what she says, you look like you don't have a vision. You look like you made her your vision. That is extremely unattractive to women because it makes them feel unsafe and vulnerable.
Yes,
because
sir, right.
time is not on women's side. Society does not care about a woman's success. Society only cares about a woman's beauty. And no matter how beautiful a woman is, she's not going to be that beautiful forever. Time is going to take that away from her. Man needs to focus on his purpose. That woman is in your life to help you with your purpose. No other reason. I think I got cut off.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Go ahead, Tom.
So that's the analogy I give guys, right? And yeah, so you got to put your woman in your life is there to help you with your purpose. That's why she's there. She's there to help you with your purpose, because you can't have kids as a man. So you have no downtime. You focus on your purpose. Women comes into your life to support you in that purpose, because if you succeed, when men get resources in their life, what do they do with those resources? They take care of their family with it. When a woman gets more resources, she feel like she don't need a man. She breaks up the family. Right. So you only want to be in a relationship with a woman who's helping you in your purpose, and that purpose keeps the relationship fresh, far beyond when the kids leave the house.
Right.
Because that purpose is changes. Like, you have to change for your purpose. You have to be different, get better.
Right.
And that's when we get men back to that and reorganize themselves in that way, then they can start having positive relationships with women.
No, and I totally agree with you, man. I agree with you 1,000%, because as I've always said in the past, Todd, women by nature are very insular, meaning, they're opportunistic, and it's based on evolutionary biology, but also they're very individualistic as well. And unless they've been conditioned to see masculinity as important and coming to the table to serve their men, they won't do it. The recent election talked about it. Many voted for themselves. They didn't vote for black men, the black family, or the black community. That's why a lot of times I become frustrated where I hear people talking about the community, but who did you vote for? Did you vote for policies? Not the candidate, but did you vote for policies that could have been impactful for our community? Men are not going to just give their lives for the sake of giving their lives just because. You're going to give that man something in return. If he's not getting anything in return, then how's it benefiting him? Relationships are symbiotic, where the man and the woman benefits. But sadly, Ty, we don't have that here in this current milieu called America. But this has been a good show, guy. I love you guys. I got to get ready to go to the office. I'm running behind. MC Recovery Wellness and Program, I thank you, brother. I love you. You always hold me down. Migto Flight, reach out to me, son. I'm going to talk with you, man. You from the Tar Heel State. And I think I'm going to bring you back, man. I'm going to do a feature show on you. And I'm going to let you tell your story and encapsulate it mostly. And then we'll bring Ty back. We have a special show where me and you and Ty actually talk about the issue. And you can just... yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Hey, not to interrupt. Two things. One, can I respond to something that the brother with the nice hat said?
Oh, yeah, in less than a minute, because I have to go, man. I'm running behind.
I'll be 10 seconds. Sometimes it's not, when we're in these situations, it's not all about putting the woman above us. Some of us have been conditioned to put everything above us. And you go through life putting everything before you, not just the woman. You just want to go along to get along. You don't want no drama. You want things to be in harmony and peace, but sometimes it's not always about her. It's about the overall peace that you want to have in the situation. That's all I want to say. And also check your email, Coach Clunish. I just sent your email.
I will, brother. Much love and blessing. Tom, I'll reach out to you, man. MC Recovery. Love you, man. And man, thank you for everybody that's been watching. This is a slow progressing channel. We're getting there, but I want to get this channel bigger than what it is. Because these shows are very important. We always talk about the importance of building the black community, but when we offer solutions such as this, mental health awareness, many times in the black community, we tend to minimize it or not more or less see it as a value. But we got to get to the core of these issues, man. And until we get to the core of the issues, there will be no revitalization of the black community or any community until we understand the root cause of the problems that we're dealing with, where we hold the women equally accountable, just like we hold our men. Until we do that, we're just talking poppycock, or what I call nebulous thinking that's not going to go anywhere, because we've been having these conversations for the last 40 years and nothing has happened. And sadly, in my opinion, it's gotten worse. But for the most part, man, I got to continue to talk about it and try to reach as many young men and men as possible. So this has been a good show, guys. We're about to sign off. Todd, I'm going to reach out to you, brother, at some point. I'll call you in a few minutes, man. I love you guys, man. And please share the content, all right? So we're about to sign off. And thank you guys once again for your time. And we're signing off.
4 in the morning, you got me up, all cause you need to talk. So 4 in the evening, wanna break up, say that you've had enough. I'm tired of talking, again and again, argue about everything. You are my darling, let's kiss and make up, I know you wanna touch. You call me every night, call me every day, I just wanna get you alone now. Trust me when I say